Ponytails podcast. Here we go. Welcome, everybody, to the Ponytails podcast. My name is Andres Gamboa, and I am your host. Welcome to the show. If this is your first time, welcome. Glad you're here. Congratulations. You did it. You did it. Tap on the back for you. Good job. I am so excited. Let me tell a little bit about our show. If you don't know what this is about, or if you kind of just stumbled upon this, we are a podcast that's not affiliated with any company, but we interview people who did an internship with a specific company called Southwestern Advantage. Now, this company recruits college kids to go door to door for 80 hours a week, not by choice. Obviously, they get to choose to do that, and college kids get to go all over the country to do this. They sell educational books to help families with homework, getting into college and all that kind of stuff, from the little ones all the way to high school seniors. And so when I did this program, and when other people who have been on our show have done this program, they have some crazy experiences, as you can imagine, from going door to door from Monday through Saturday, from like 8 in the morning till 10 p.m. at night, just all day. So we have them come on the show, share those experiences. Sometimes they're inspiring, sometimes they're scary, sometimes they're funny. We never know. And our guests just have been really, really awesome to come and share their time with us. So hope you guys enjoy this. If this is your first time, make sure you guys subscribe, like us on YouTube, Facebook, all that stuff. We're everywhere. Subscribe, follow our newsletter, and go to our website, theponytailspodcast.com. You can sign up to get our newsletter. It's called The Colt. Everything's horse themed here. So COLT, The Colt. As well as you can check out our merch, all this other stuff. Get yourself a t-shirt. I don't know. Whatever you want. My guest today is Steve Herlihy, and he is from Atlanta, Georgia. He's a very proud Atlantean. We're going to talk about that a little bit. It's such a cool story when you hear people who are rooted in a place and they grew up in a place and have so much history in a place. And so I'm excited to hear about that. Steve sold for 9 summers from 1983 to 1991. Which is a really solid time period, I think, for the internship. A lot of people who were doing a lot of really cool stuff and kind of pushing the envelope and growing the company fast. He was part of the Blitz organization, which, if you're listening to this and you have sold books, you might have heard of or been a part of the Eagle Blitz organization. But he was part of the Blitz organization, which was one of the founding organizations for that big group that is now Eagle Blitz. So you guys are going to get to hear about how that happened. He went to Georgia Tech. And if you want to get in touch with him, his email is Steven, that's a PH, Steven, STEPHEN, T Herlihy, HERLIHY at gmail.com. If you want to go say hi, if you know Steve, you want to tell him hello, keep up with him. If you sold books with him, maybe, and you listen to this, go get in touch with him there. His favorite scroll from the Augmendino book that we all read, our Bookfield Bible, is scroll number 3. I will persist until I succeed. And so without further ado, let me bring on the screen here, and boom. How's it going, Steve?
Good. It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm so excited. I am so excited. We are doing season 6 of this show, and we have come a long way. We still have a long way to go, but it's because of people like you coming on the show and sharing their experiences that we get to do this. So thank you for being here. I'm super, super honored.
Oh, you're welcome.
Now, we were talking about this, backstage before we went live, and you were telling me that you're a big soccer fan, and I'm excited to hear about this because I just moved to Portland. I went to a Timbers game about a year ago. Amazing experience. The MLS is something I'm newer at, but big United fan is what I heard.
Oh, absolutely. So a little of the background. I said you told me you're from Colombia, which I think is fantastic. One of my best friends is from Ecuador, so I've spent some time down there. So love the region.
Beautiful.
My parents, my father's an architect. So if anyone was ever in the Fulton County Stadium where the Braves played, he designed that when he was 25 years old out of Georgia Tech with 3 other guys. My mom's an artist. And so they sort of lived in the hippie part of Atlanta. And so they signed my brother and I up to play soccer when we were 6. So I started playing soccer in 1969, played all the way through high school, went to Georgia Tech. And thanks to Title IX, there are no more men's sports at Georgia Tech because they can't fit them in, and played some club there. And then I I coached soccer for 15 years with my children. So
That's so
love
cool.
coaching, love teaching the game, love everything about it. I've probably up until the pandemic saw every single Atlanta United game, including preseason games. And if they were in Atlanta, I was at the game. So big fan.
That is awesome. I'm gonna have to use you to get, like to talk some trash whenever the Timbers are playing you, so I can get into the MLS a little bit more. It's so different than European soccer, but it's still like, as I've learned, it's so cool.
I watched the game on messaging with my friends, going back and forth. So that would be pretty normal.
That's sweet. I love that. Oh man, and because my dad was a soccer coach, so I like the feeling of having your dad as a coach and with your kids and stuff. That's such a cool, unique experience.
We need some good
I mean,
Colombians on our team. We're all Argentinians, 2 Brazilians, 2 Germans. You can't have a team without at least a German,
yeah.
But most of our team is from Argentina.
Yeah, I that's pretty sweet. I feel like if a country's won multiple World Cups, you need at least one player from there because they're doing something right. Your Germans, your Argentinians, your Brazilians, Colombians. We're up and coming. Unfortunately, we didn't make this World Cup coming up, but I'm super pumped for it. This is going to be such a good, exciting time for the sport. I feel like.
Did you know the story of the '94 team that in the run up to the finals of the World Cup? They had the best run-up record going into the Cup, and they were playing in Argentina. Do you know this story? They beat Argentina 5-0 and got a standing ovation from the Argentine fans because they respected how good that team was. And of course, they
the Colombian team
early. The '94 World Cup Colombian team.
Oh yes, I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I thought you were talking about the U.S. team.
No, the Colombian team. But the fact that they got a standing ovation in an arch rival stadium shows the respect that soccer supporters have for their teams, and they appreciate good soccer. So when I heard that story, I was like, it elevated, what I think about South American soccer. I thought that was fantastic.
Yeah. Well, and this is actually a really interesting conversation to have because people don't understand this here in the United States. And I grew up in Nebraska when we moved to the United States. And people there are big Nebraska fans because they don't have any pro teams in Nebraska. Right. So they're all big Husker football team fans. And they're like, we're the biggest fans of any sport ever. And I go, no, you haven't been to Buenos Aires when like Boca Juniors is playing River Plate.
Right.
And there's cops everywhere because people are going to die. Like, it's not the same.
Andres, I think it is. Back in '81, I was in Ecuador for a month. And I went to a game in Quito with my buddy that I grew up with. And my Spanish was marginal at best at 3 years of high school Spanish, right? And there was barbed wire around the field. And at the end of the game, I said, Tony, what are they chanting? He said, oh, they're going to kill number 7. Oh, nice. They were not too happy with his play today. And I was like, really? He goes, I don't know. That's what you asked me what they were saying.
Just letting you know. And here's the thing. People are listening going, no, wait. If you haven't heard of Andres Escobar, that same 1994 Colombia national team that went to the World Cup in the United States, and they played the U.S. in the first round, and they needed to be the United States to even move on. Now, back then, after that 5-0 defeat in Argentina, with Tino Asprilla was our star, and Valderrama, he had the big old hair. They were like touted as being one of the favorites. Maybe not the world. They could have been, but it was like one of those like it's like Brazil.
They finished first in your South American qualifier.
Which for people who don't know what that means is it's probably the hardest qualifier besides Europe to get. Like you've got to beat Brazil and Argentina. It's insane. So we were touted as like they're gonna win the World Cup, and Colombians were like, yeah. And in the first round, they got beat. They needed to beat the U.S. to move on to the playoffs, and they lost because of an own goal by a defender named Andres Escobar.
Right.
And then he was lynched and murdered on the streets of Cali, Colombia, like 2 weeks after they came home. That was it's a 30 for 30. Look it up on ESPN. It's legit. That's how much we love soccer.
That's right.
People for it.
I'm sure there's no money involved. There's no betting, but other than that, we just love our team.
Right. No, it's in our blood. And to people who are like wondering, like, why is the World Cup that big of a deal? It's because here in the United States is probably the best country in the world. Still is, regardless, or depending on who you ask, I guess. But I think, and they're known for that, right? They go to the Olympics and they win gold almost everywhere, right? And so when our country that is known for like drug dealing and cocaine does something good, it's such a huge rush of pride because it's like, look, we're not drug dealers. Like, I swear we're good people. We're good at other things, you know? And I think that's why it's such a big deal, because you get to go. They don't get paid much to go to the World Cup.
Right.
It's compared to what they make into like their club teams. But when you go play for your country, it's not even, it's more than the Olympics. It's
Sure.
you go play for your country, this sport, and you're representing your nation. There's teams that know they're not going to win, right? But it's just that fact that they even got to grace the stage of the world's most watched sport at the highest stage possible is a dream come true for them. And it's different than just college football.
Very
I'll
different.
Put it there.
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Well, when you're
Oh
in
my
Atlanta,
gosh.
I'll take you to a United game.
Oh, I would love that. I would love that. I'll take you up with. I mean, we're gonna have to make a road trip here with
Absolutely.
my wife and just head to Atlanta. I love that stadium, the Mercedes-Benz Arena.
Yeah.
It's insane. It's like
Now,
so
have
big.
you heard about the concession prices?
Yes, and that's also amazing. I'll let you explain that because I've been talking for too long. But that is an amazing idea with they kicked everyone out, right? And then they decided to bring
Well,
their own
Arthur
people.
Blank, who's the Home Depot guy who understands marketing, he realized that if you raise the prices, you don't necessarily make more money. So I'm a cheapskate, and so I don't ever eat at a sporting event because I don't spend $9 for a hot dog and $17 for a beer. So you can
Right.
get a hot dog or a sandwich or a barbecue for like $2. Candy's like $1. A drink is maybe $2, and it's the kind of cup you can refill the entire game. So
Amazing.
and a beer is like $4 or $5, maybe $3.
Yeah.
In other words, he just
Amazing.
put the lowest prices possible, and I think his revenue from concessions is number one in the league. He has the lowest prices and the most money.
Yeah, and it's for the football team too. It's for any sporting event,
Yeah.
anything.
Yep.
Yeah, and I heard about this because the way it works is like most stadiums have like a contract out with like caterers that come in, and they're the ones that set the prices. And his biggest deal was attendance, because people like weren't going to the games, or if they did, they would show up like late because they would be eating, so they wouldn't have to buy food at the stadium. Well, I heard that after they did this, people started showing up like 20 minutes before, 30 minutes before, sometimes up to an hour before the game, because you can drink there for cheaper than you could go anywhere else.
Cheaper than
And so
the bar.
it's like, yeah, because you're right in the middle of the city. I mean, like, I mean, not in the middle of the city, but like you're not far from like bars and stuff, or a short Uber ride. So like, instead, people would go there like half an hour earlier and just at their seat just drink, and so the stadium would fill up before, and the attendance went through the roof, and I was like, this is a genius market. You
But when
guys are
you
doing
come
it
with
right.
me, we'll be there an hour early, an hour and a half. We'll watch the warm ups and have a couple adult beverages while we watch them warm up.
You know what we should do is I will do this with you. Well, I'll go to watch a game with you. We got to go watch some football or something, and some soccer, obviously. But when the World Cup comes, we should go check out whoever's playing in Atlanta, because you
They'll
guys are
probably
hosting
have
one
the
of the.
semifinal game, at least.
That.
No, I'm going. No,
That.
all the World Cup games in Atlanta. I'm there. That's not even a question.
I'm
I don't
going
care
with you
what it costs, I'm
to
there.
some of them. I will
Yeah.
go with you to
Yeah.
whatever.
Oh yeah. I went to World Cup games in '94. When the last time I was in America, I saw Brazil beat Spain 3-2. No, Brazil beat the Netherlands 3-2, and I saw Spain and Korea tie 2-2. I saw 9 goals in 2 games.
Oh man, I'm so excited.
And I got to
so
see the
excited.
entire South American experience with Brazil. Of course, they won the World Cup that year.
Right.
And I saw them, beat the Netherlands 3-2 in Dallas. It was awesome. It's like nothing else.
Wow. I'm
World
with you.
Cup is
2026.
different level.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
Yeah.
We'll do it. We're doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. I told
I'm
you, you
committing
got
now.
a place to stay at our house. You come hang out with us.
I'm committing now. Thank you so much. That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's so fun. The last thing I'll say about that stadium, it's really cool, is they have Lewis Hamilton's car hung up on there. He's the Formula One driver. They have like a Formula One car just hanging there, I think on the second floor, at least when I was there.
Okay.
Amazing. Big fan of Mercedes. So overall, huge fan. Oh man. Well, dang. Okay, let's what do you say we get talking about some some other stuff than soccer. That could
All right.
be why people are here. People are like, "What the hell are these soccer?" Turn this lost our audience at this point. Okay, so you sold, and we'll get into Southwestern stuff here in a little bit, but walk me through, catch us up. Maybe there's friends of yours here listening who haven't heard from you or haven't been able to keep up with you since 1991. You left Southwestern, and catch us up in the last 30 years. What have you been up to, and what are you up to now?
Okay. When I finished selling books, I went through the placement program there at Southwestern, professional services, and I set up 13 different interviews. When I finished those interviews, I had 13 job offers, and so I got, I was interviewing the companies to decide where I was going to work. It wasn't the other way around.
Nice.
And I ended up selecting a company out of Houston, Texas called First Meridian that was founded by two sales managers that had sold books. They were about 10, 15 years older than us. And Spencer Hayes invested in our company 40 years ago, gave us some seed money to get started. And I've been with them 30 years now. So the company's 40 years old. I'm in my 30th year. I own the company with several book guys. We bought out the founders, and we do audits in 4 different areas for wealthy families. Our target families are 50 million to billions. We work in what's called the family office space, and we do wealth transfer audits. We do business continuity audits. What I mean by an audit is we study what they have in place and we audit it so we can show them where it can be improved. So that's wealth transfer, business continuity, philanthropy. Most of our clients have the type net worth where they're very philanthropic, and life insurance. So we built a company on helping the wealthier families position their wealth so that they could give more away and they could keep their businesses intact and not have to sell them to pay estate taxes. And so it's a very, most all jobs are small businesses. They're not the big ones, right? So family owned businesses. So with our clientele, 97% of all our clients own their own businesses. So all the wealth that I see, and I see the balance sheets of the wealthiest families in the country. You would know many of the names of our clients just offhand. And it's their real estate they own, and it's the companies they own. It's not in the stock market, And so we help them. We help them with this understanding. We take very complicated things, and this is where the Southwestern part comes in. Is our tagline is clarity for complex issues. So we're dealing with very complicated issues, and we've learned through the years how to distill it down and describe very complicated things in very simple, easy to understand ways. So we're able to help people really improve their planning. So my partners now are guys I sold books with back in the day. 3 of my partners we were all number 1 at the company at different parts of our career. We started hiring the number 1 kid years and years. We've had several of them move on to other things. And so that's the guys that I'm in business with. I met my wife my last summer selling books. She followed me one day, and I decided that was the coolest girl I'd ever met in my life. So after 5 years of dating, we got married, and we had 6 kids in 8 years. We don't have any doubles or triples. We just have lots of kids. And then my wife decided to homeschool our kids. And so she homeschooled 5 kids. I've got 3 in college, all 3 on academic scholarship. I've never written a check for tuition. Don't plan on it. So I've got one of my best friends I sold books with. His kids are about 4 years older than my kids, and he started homeschooling with 1983. I sold a couple of books, Andres, but probably half of what you did. My best friend now, David Stanley, ended up in that summer. It was his first year. He finished number 10. His wife finished number 1. So my best friends finished number 1 and 10, and I didn't get my picture in the book, right? But I ended up passing him later. But anyway,
that's right.
So
it's a growth business
company. We have clients all over the country. Interestingly, we just put a strategic partnership in place with Hightower Securities, which is 120 different wealth management firms under one roof with over $100 billion under management. And they were looking for a strategic partnership with a firm that did not manage money. So out of the 120 companies, we're the only one that doesn't manage money. We do high-end life insurance and high-end planning for a fee. And we merged with them so we could do that for their whole client base.
That's wild.
But interestingly, we're very heavily engaged in finding the next group of guys to teach the business to that are probably in their 30s, so they can take this thing 4 or 5 times bigger than it is today. That's where we're at.
Wow, I have so many questions. This is so cool. This is unique. I mean, we've had all sorts of people on here, so we got it's a whole gambit. So, first of all, congratulations on 30 years in one place. The fact that you've lived in Atlanta for so long, and you were telling me like within like a few blocks or a few miles of where you grew up and you went to school and you worked, right? And the fact that you've been with one company for so long, it talks a lot about your commitment, which is so that's amazing it's an amazing lesson to learn, which I will ask you about as we go through. I just wanted to say congratulations on that, because that's amazing to see. Our generation, my generation, and even the one after mine, they switch jobs sometimes more often than they shower, which is probably not inaccurate to say, but still, like, that's such a cool lesson there in and of itself. I guess the first question I'd have for you is, you leave Southwestern, you start with this company, and so did you go like at a ground level, or how did you, like, because you said you were interviewing them, so it must have been that you weren't necessarily like an intern at that company. Like, how did you work your way up to now owning it, and what lessons from Southwestern did you take to be able to not only commit for 30 years, but to be able to go and ascend so well and so efficiently?
A couple things. So the guys who started my company sold books, so they understood the benefit. When you finish number one in the company a couple times, they have a pretty good idea that you learned something. And so they were astute enough to know that if they didn't offer equity to the people they were hiring, give them an opportunity to earn ownership in the company, that we would all just leave and start our own companies. Right. Because that's who we are. So we built a program where the more you produce in revenue, the more stock is offered to you. So those who produce the most had the opportunity to own the most.
Nice.
So I'm the second largest owner in my company, but it was just through years of production, right?
Building. Yeah.
So after we have a couple of year, period of getting to know each other, and then based on production, when you hit certain levels, you had opportunities to buy into the company. And so, interestingly, of my 5 partners right now, the most junior guy I hired in my second year, he's been there 28 years.
Wow.
So that's the most junior partner, has been there 28 years. And everyone else has been there, I'm there 30, a couple of guys are at 33, one guy's at 38. It's just, we've been in business together since we left college, and so
amazing.
Now I'm trying to remember what your specific question was, so I answer it.
I mean, yeah, you sort of did. I was just more wondering about like the ascension. So if I'm sitting there thinking like, wow, I just started a company. I started with this company. Whatever company you are, how do I make it so I can ascend? And like, what was the mentality behind that?
Yeah. So the way we did it is we are and have been always working with the wealthiest families in the country. So it's not something you learn overnight. Just kind of like selling books. Think about it. You have a week of sales school. You learn something. You can talk. You know what to say. You're not an expert at anything. And how did we learn how to do that job? You followed somebody. You went and worked with them over and over and over, right? So what we did at our firm is that everyone we hire, we partner with a senior partner, and they work all their situations together for a couple of years. So interestingly, Andres, when I would sit in a meeting, I would take 2 sets of notes. One was the meeting and how it was going with the client, what I needed to learn. And the other one was how to run the meeting. I was learning how to do the job. At the same time, I was going to be responsible for this client in a couple of years. So I needed to understand what was going on with the client. So we basically had it'd almost be like a, not mentorship, but like an apprentice, basically. You're learning by watching an expert for years, right? And then you get to a point where you can always rely on a partner for help, but you don't need them sitting in every meeting anymore.
You're ready.
Yeah. So we've built our company that way, and it was a great way to learn. It's not like some people, hey, I'm going to learn how to work with a $3 million family, so one day I can work with a $90 million family. No, we're going to introduce you to a $90 million family and show you how to do that from day one. but we understand you're not going to know how to do it for a couple years.
Right.
So it's
That's awesome.
So it's continual training.
Mentorship and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
There's
it
like a
is.
lot of
And think about it. You're
yeah,
growing your own company, right? So you want the people to become experts as quickly as they can, so they can have their own book of business.
right. Well, okay. So next question. Sorry, I hope you're okay with me asking you because I'm so curious about this. This is
totally.
super interesting. I got two more questions just on this, but for people who are listening who might not exactly understand, I did life insurance for a while, but it was always targeted for middle income families. The life insurance and stuff that you're providing for these families, it's a different kind of monster and a different kind of beast altogether. Because when you're able to have a larger net worth, it gets so much more complicated. So I guess if you could explain the difference between, like, say, your typical American household and their life insurance versus like why it's so much more complicated when when people start increasing their wealth to
Sure.
those numbers.
So life insurance gets used for different reasons. So what you were doing probably is the traditional, somebody buys a policy because if there's a death, they need cash to overcome, a loss of income or something like that.
Yes.
Pay off debt, something like that. So it's risk management in order to give you dollars and liquidity when needed, when you can't get it somewhere else. And most people that think of life insurance, that's what they think about. And it's absolutely used that way. So in my world, I'll just give you a simple example, is say I meet a family worth $100 million. Is you can, the only person on the planet you can give your wealth to without there being a tax is your spouse. So husband, wife, any amount of money, if I had $2 billion, gave it to my wife, no transfer tax. Everyone else on the planet, there's a 40% tax, a transfer tax. So think of a family, they got $100 million, mom and dad have a company, they pass away, they leave it to their kids, there's a 40% tax. So that's $40 million of tax on $100 million. Doesn't that sound great after all the income tax you paid your whole life?
Amazing.
So with our audit process, on average, we tend to transfer about a third more of net worth. So I could probably save a $100 million family $30 million of that $40 million problem. Okay. So they don't meet me. They got a $40 million problem. They pay me a fee. I show them how to own things differently, use the tax code to their advantage. And now they owe $10 million, not 40. Well, that's better than 40, right?
Absolutely.
But 10 million is still $10 million. If you have enough health where I can get you an offer, let's say we can buy 10 million of insurance for $2 million. Maybe it's $200,000 a year for 10 years. Doesn't matter. Let's just say it cost you $2 million. So now you started with a $40 million problem. I got it down to 10. Then we provided 10 million of liquidity for 2. So now that $100 million estate's going down, and we've used about 2 million out of 100 instead of 40 million. And then I get paid a commission on the life insurance. And so it's used for liquidity for taxes in a lot of cases. But that's just a simple example of kind of why somebody. So, Andres, a lot of people in life insurance would go in and go, "Oh man, your dad's got a $100 million company. You got a $40 million problem. You should buy 40 million of coverage." And then my company comes in and goes, "Oh man, you got a $40 million problem. Let's see if we can't get it down to zero. And whatever we can't get to zero, let's talk about the ways to get to cash. You can either sell something, borrow money, have cash, or use insurance. That's it."
Right.
And the only reason people use insurance is because it's cheaper. They don't like it.
Yeah.
It's not anything they really love. It's just math, And when you get down to just the math, it's like, why would you solve a $10 million problem with 10 million if you can solve it for 2 or 3?
Yeah. Any day.
That's how it works.
That's genius. Now, is there a way do you think that like this could be because I'm just hearing this episode air and people in my neighborhood in Portland going, tax the rich, eat the rich. Which, look, listen, there's a tax code for a reason, and it's allowed for everybody, right? And so then it's like it's more about learning learning these kinds of things. Do you think that this is something that could apply to a family who's maybe at the time of the passing or something, like maybe this podcast gets big, it doesn't become $1 million podcast, but it's $500,000 and then I die. It's not that big. Could you still apply these same principles to even a smaller net worth versus or is there a specific reason or a cutoff or a target net worth that you're like, You know what I mean?
So 30 years ago, when I started in the business, the amount you could give to your kids with no tax was $600,000. So take a married couple, they could give $1.2 million. Okay. So if
Right.
someone had $1 million, they didn't really have a problem. They could get a goodwill and they had credits to offset that first $1.2 million. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Under the current tax law, it's $12 million per person. So a married couple can move $24 million with no tax. A single
I didn't
person
know
can
that.
move $12 million with no tax. Basically, what happens is you have a credit that's worth enough to offset the tax on $12 million.
Okay.
So if someone has a really nice net worth of 20 million and they're married, I can help them get their wills done right and fix the problem. They don't need a 6-month engagement with me. So that's why I'm working at higher and higher net worths, because think about it. When I got in the business, it was $1.2 million of credit. I mean, that you could pass tax free. Now it's 24. That law changes at the end of 2025. And I won't get into the tax reasons, but it's going to go down probably in more like the 10 range, 5 each, as opposed to the 12 range. And it's the way they wrote the tax law 7 years ago. So it's always changing.
Interesting. Wow. So tax law, I mean, you're probably an expert in all this kind of stuff, like you're as far as like estate planning and that and all that kind of stuff. And this is important to understand that this is different than what you were talking about earlier, because you're there's no money moving. You're talking about asset like value, right? You're talking about like you were leaving like all the real estate. If I die and I own 100 houses, that's what you're talking about. It's not like
I'm just talking about your net worth, all your assets minus your liabilities. And so if you think about what are your assets, it's anything you own, which home, real estate, business, stocks, bonds, whatever you own, right? So your net worth, whatever your net worth is, right?
Yeah.
But so this becomes an issue when you have more than the credits, right? And like I said, the credits, they're 12 million each right now, but in the last 100 years, they've come down 8 times. So this will be the 9th time they've been reduced. My family had a lot of money years ago, way before it got to me. And so we didn't have an estate tax or an income tax till 1916. And so there was no income tax, there was no estate tax. But the first estate tax was 25%, and the first exemption was $10 million. By the 1980s, it had gotten down to your exemption had gone from $10 million to $60,000. So everybody worth more than 60,000 had a problem. When I got in the business, it was 60,000. Now it's 12 million. It'll be back down to 5. It's always moving. But the thing is, to talk to someone that's in the business, they can figure out if you have a problem or not. If you do, they can show you how to mitigate it.
And there's your audits.
0 estate tax plans where we get the taxes to 0.
That is bananas. That is so crazy. This is like super.
But think about it. If you have all these businesses that don't have to be sold to pay taxes, think of all the jobs that aren't lost.
Right.
And I think the velocity of a dollar in a community is like 17. So when there's a dollar made, it creates about $17 of other jobs in a community. So it's really important for these small businesses. When I say small, my career, that definition has changed. But take someone who has $4 or $5 million in a business, a heating and air company or something, and 28 employees. If something happened and they went out of business, that's a problem for the community.
Right.
Or especially for those families.
For those 18 families, right?
Absolutely.
So 18 families, the average four in the household. Yeah, that's rough. That's so interesting. Question on this though, follow-up question, different topic, or same topic but different angle, is so you were saying that 97% of the people that you've worked with were all business owners. And I think that's a really interesting lesson there, because that goes to show that working for yourself and starting a business is so fruitful, or it can be so fruitful, right? Like, because you're not talking to people, you're talking to people who decided to take a chance on themselves. And so maybe there's someone listening out there who has a 9-to-5 job, which there's nothing wrong with that, but they've been wanting to start a business, right? What can you say that those people had in common who were self-made people? What did they have in common that allowed them to be so successful in your experience of getting to know them and really like spending time with them?
It's really funny you asked that, because I asked that question to myself 2 years ago. So We work with the wealthiest people in the country. I see their balance sheet. I know what they own. And I ask myself, what do they all have in common? And interestingly, I've asked about 20 people that question, and you get like, hard work, good idea, yada, yada, yada. And the way I've distilled it down is the one thing they all have in common, they were willing to take a risk.
Ooh.
And by willing to take a risk, they were willing to bet on themselves and start a company. That one thing is the most important thing in building wealth. That one thing. So let's talk about the variance. Some guys and gals are just on, they think that way. They're taking a risk is no big deal. They can go start a company. They might start 4 or 5 of them. So what do you do for the guy or gal that isn't exactly like that? What about having partners? What about going in with 4 or 5 other people and starting a company, right? You might own 20% of it instead of 100, but you also have 20% of the downside too, right? What's another version? How about a franchise? My grandfather owned 11 franchises. If you really distill Southwestern down, it finally dawned on me, Southwestern is a franchise in learning how to sell. You don't have to make up the product. You don't have to make up the pricing. You don't have to make up the sales talk. You don't have to make up anything, but you do have to work it. It's like being a Chick-fil-A operator. You don't have to make all that stuff up, but if you work it well, it can work. And so there's all these different, or you can just be an employee. But I explained to my kids, every time you make $1, if you don't own the company, you'll never get the full dollar, or that company will be out of business. So my wife taught our kids how to run their own companies when they got to be about 14. And my kids run their own camps, and they work 20 hours a week. It's 9 to 1, 5 days a week. And they gross $1,000 to $2,000 a week per camp.
That's awesome.
20 hours.
That's wild.
They own it. We taught them how to do it. We taught them how to own it. And it's interesting because they make a lot of money. Because they're the owners and they're rewarded for the idea and the execution. And they hire their friends, and their friends can make $300 or $400 in a week, which is great money, but they're not making $1,500, $2,000 like my daughter.
Because she owns it.
And we have ownership lessons behind that idea as well. My wife actually writes for Southwestern in the parenting module of what they're selling.
Right.
I'm not sure she's gotten into this aspect of what she taught her kids or not, but she's writing a book on raising unentitled children.
Oh, I love that. I love that. That's so cool. On the same note, same theme here. You've probably seen people make plenty of mistakes that cost them financially and or otherwise in their companies. I'm asking this as even a small business owner of this podcast. I own the podcast. It's an LLC. It's tiny. What are some things that I should avoid, and what are some things I took the risk. So here I am. Any advice on, like, if I want to scale it, what should I avoid and what should I for sure have airtight, as I grow my personal little business?
Let's start with the positive first, how to make sure you do well. That's going to come down to the quality of people you're in business with, whether you're at partners or whether you hire them. So the higher quality people that are helping you grow it, the less risk you're going to have. And I would say that the one thing I'd be mindful of is being over leveraged or debt, because that can take you out. Is owing too much money, right?
Okay.
Some people expand too fast and they owe too much. So being mindful of both sides of the balance sheet and just being mindful. I'm not saying don't use debt. I'm just saying be very mindful of what that cost of capital is costing you and how much that you have and how leveraged you are. That's a simple answer to your question, but it gives you one positive and one pitfall to look out for and one positive to concentrate on.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. The one thing that we have talked about on the show here with previous guests about this is, because Southwestern teaches you the franchise of sales, but then once you leave, they don't teach you like legal stuff. Like when you go open up your own company and like how to start an LLC even, that's, if you ask the average first year book kid that gets out of there, maybe a couple years book kid come out of there, you're like, hey, start an LLC. They probably don't even know what that stands for.
Right.
Because that's something that people, so we've talked about that on the show where it's like, you also want to get your legal stuff.
Yeah.
Tight, but I'd like, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I'm friends with Todd McWhorter, and I listened to your interview with Todd. I don't remember if it was in that interview or just me knowing him when he talked about his real estate experiences in Denver and being over leveraged and how it came back to bite him. So, and anyone that knows Todd, super sharp, super hard worker, everything you could get going for you. Yet, some things can turn on you. And I don't remember if it was your conversation or just a conversation I had with him, but that's an example of that. Doesn't matter how smart you are, how well you can sell. You can have some pitfalls that way. Doesn't mean, but then what do you do if you're Todd? You just dust yourself back off and you can make it 10 times over. Back to that scroll we talked about. I will persist until I succeed. Right? Maybe that was Todd too. I never asked him.
It's his life motto, it seems like, anyway.
Okay, yeah.
That is so sweet. Now, on that same follow-up question to what you just said, you said higher quality people. So more into the recruiting aspect of it, you were saying that you were able to get like the number one guy that came out of the company. How do you make sure as a company that you attract top talent like that? What are some things that you can use to set up as an entrepreneur to be able to recruit that kind of talent onto your team that you've learned in the past?
Well, one thing I've learned is that top talent is probably going to own their own thing at some point or own a piece of it. So if you're not willing to make some equity available, you're probably going to lose them. I know I would have left, and I know my partners would have left, but we didn't. The structure was there where you're going to be rewarded for production, so you don't have to leave. You produce more, you'll own more. You'll have the opportunity. No one makes you buy in. You're betting on yourself. So that's one thing is they have to have an opportunity to hit their own goals. And I'll just tell you from experience, my partners and I, we kind of suck at taking a B player and coaching them up into an A player. We're just not good at it. Some people are. I know some sales managers that have taken some B players and coached them up into A players. That just isn't my skill set. So I have to kind of go look for an A player, and let them be themselves. And I need to guide them and mold them and encourage them and help them. But now you might be one of those great recruiters that can coach people up. So you have to know that about yourself. I know I need to go find an A player.
Fair enough. That is such an interesting take on that. And so the offering ownership, I think is a genius way of explaining that, because it's like that person's it's sweat equity that they're gonna put into the business too. So it's not just like their ability to produce, but it's also just since they have skin in the game that way, they take ownership of it in their own way, and I feel like they produce better. You can really like bring that out of them. So
and think about it is that you want to help them. I always want to know. I interviewed a guy today at noon, and one of my first questions is, what are you trying to accomplish with your career? And it ends up that it's probably not a good fit for what he's trying to do. This guy's so talented. He's got some other things. He goes, why don't we just work some things together? He goes, because I've got some billionaire clients that it will take me 50 years to learn what you know. But helping somebody accomplish what they want to accomplish. And, I try to explain to my kids, who's got more money? The guy that invented the Steinway piano or Sam Walton who created Walmart? The Steinway is kind of expensive. It costs a lot of money to buy one. You just don't sell that many of them, right?
Right.
Sam realized that you don't have to, if you can make more money by lowering the price. And here's my point, is that if you hired people, and even if they had equity in your company, but if you had a $70 million company, not a $7 million company, which would you rather own, 100% of 7 or half of 70? I mean, it's rhetorical. So if you get the right people and grow it the right way, don't be afraid of having partners if it makes sense. Doesn't mean you have to do it that way. But, as you go to get A players, you're going to have to reward them in a way that hits their goals. Not everybody wants to be an owner, as long as you pay them well. And you and I both learned selling books, people work harder for appreciation than they do for money.
Yes.
That's a fact. Ooh. So if you never forget that principle, that doesn't necessarily mean you have to give away equity. All I'm saying is, if you identified me as somebody you wanted to work with, I was going to end up owning part of it. It just you know what I'm saying? So just realize what they're trying to accomplish and see if you can, how do you need to work it out with them?
Steve, you're dropping firebombs of wisdom right here. This is amazing. This is really cool stuff. I'm going to give a quick shout out. I'm just going to sprinkle these in throughout the episode. Give a quick shout out to one of our friends here because you reminded me of coaching. And Will Metscher is a coach with Southwestern Consulting. He's hiring, and he gave us 3 tips to share with our listeners. Steve, you can tell me what you think of these 3 things based on what he was saying. But one, if you're a coach, if you are interested in being a coach, or you're coaching someone, not even like in sales, but in life, coaches are still broken. The question is, are you willing to admit that about yourself and get yourself also coached? Like, learn from someone and then pass that lesson forward. Tip number 2, he said, you don't have to know everything to be a great coach. Just actually care, ask good questions, and hold people accountable to doing more. And then tip number 3 is your clients do not have to be the most driven. Some people are desperate for work-life balance and want your help in making that work. So if you can see yourself as a rockstar coach, let us know. We'll refer you over to Will Metscher, who can take you from a B player to an A player, as Steve was saying. Or maybe you're an A player and he can make you like a super A+ player. That's it. That's all. That's Will Metscher, everybody. Steve, I had a question for you as well, following up with this. And so your kids are in college. Did the conversation ever come up?
I have a rising senior, a rising 9th grader.
Oh,
I've got a junior in college studying business. I've got a senior in college studying organic chemistry with a math minor who's going to get a PhD in chemistry. And
nice.
then I've got a senior that's graduated with 1 degree in ceramics and art and working, and will finish her 2nd degree in 3 months in teaching. So since my wife homeschooled our kids, they dual enrolled in college at 16. So my oldest daughter entered college with 58 college credits. So in 4 years, she was able to get 2 degrees.
That's amazing, man. You guys, I'm gonna ask you about parenting advice too, towards later on in this. But did the conversation ever come up with your kids to have them go sell books, or did that opportunity ever arise or anything like that? And
it's
what
like
did that look like?
you got it, and you know your kids. I had 1 child pass away, so the way I phrase it is 1 child got a perfect father, the other 5 got me. So for the 5 that got me, 3 of them I talked to about selling books, and 2 of them it just doesn't fit their personality. And I'll just leave it at that. But with the other 3, we do talk about it, but we're just there to educate them. But I will tell you, the carrot I put out there for them is, here's what I told them. My wife sold for 5 years. Her first summer, she doubled more than what I did, and so my best friend is in the top 10 that ever sold books by the time we finished, so they've been around. Most of my best friends sold books. They've been around that community. They understand
awesome.
the quality. And here's what I told them is, I said, you get 3 things out of selling books. Number 1, if you work hard, study hard, be teachable, and you try really hard and you focus, you will make some money. I said, number 2, you'll get experiences that'll help you for life, not just in business. And number 3, if you do it for multiple summers, you will create lifelong friendships, and that will end up being the best of the 3. I said, so since you guys, let me put it in perspective again, Andres. I got kids doing 20 hours a week, making 1,000, 2,000 a week. Okay. But here's what I told them is, I said, I don't want you worried about the money your first summer. If you go sell books, I will match your profit. I will give a half to you at the end of your first summer and half at the end of your second. So if you choose not to go back, just forfeit it. But I don't want you worried about making money. I want you worried about the other stuff. I want you to worry about working the job the way it was taught to you. And I don't want you worried about it. And I said, oh, and would it really suck so bad if you made 10 grand, but you made 20? I mean, that wouldn't suck. Right. So that's the deal I've got dangled in front of them. And so I'm sitting there thinking hard about it. So
that's the best I've heard so far for that age, because we have people who have kids about that age. And I'm like, that's smart.
and what I told him, I said, guys, if you really boil it down, you can make more money doing what we've already taught you. I said, but I don't want you to consider selling books for the money that you would make while selling. Everything that I've made since then came from the skills I had when I learned over 9 summers. So I've made multiple more than I ever did at that job. But it's the skills that I learned, right? But then again, I wouldn't even trade that for the friendships that I have. So I want them potentially to be in an environment where they could get some friends like I have. And my 5 or 6 people in our wedding party sold. you know, and I just had like 6 guys to my lake house, and I just realized that I've known all of them more than 40 years. So it's not like the only friends I have I got from selling books.
Oh, I
I
love
still
that.
keep up with people I grew up with, so anyway, um,
I love
it's
that.
it's one where it's to be determined. I've got a son that doesn't want to go to college, so he just finished a year of welding in dual enrollment. He's got 2 years of machining, so he'll finish high school this year, take 1 more year of machining. And I told him you ought to backfill your college experience and sell for 3 or 4 years and combine that with your welding and machining. And then you got to own a welding or machining shop at one point.
And you're set
And your cousin who went to Brown, you'll make 10 times what she did from the Ivy League.
all day.
Yeah.
Before assuming they went for free, because otherwise they're going to already start with a negative 200,000 or whatever with
Well,
whatever college
and like
costs
I
nowadays.
said, all my kids have gotten academic scholarships through what we have in Georgia, so we haven't written any checks for college.
That's
Just
awesome.
just room and board.
That is awesome. That is great. I love that mentality of like, this is, you want them to do it if they want to do it, but you want them to do it for the lessons and for the experience itself,
Right.
not really the money, which is great. That's such a good reason to do it. Now, obviously, it must be said, not everyone has an amazing experience, but like you said, if you go and do it and you really work hard at it, you're more than likely going to have a pretty good experience, regardless of that. So that's so awesome. I love that. Last question I had about your career and what you're up to, is, you've been doing this for 30 years. As you're looking back, what's the what's the next 10 years of this look like for you? Because people stay in companies for different reasons and for different times, amounts of time. So what are your goals yourself, now that you're looking back on these last 30 years? What are your goals for the next 10, whether it's with work or personally?
Well, with work, we're going to get that next group of folks in place and teach them how to take the company and grow it. And so that's from a professional standpoint, because we've built something that's unbelievably helpful in the space that we're in. So we want to make sure that they can be scaled and taken to another level. And then, I'm involved just with my faith, and I'm looking for opportunities to kind of plug in, to my Christian faith and how I can help other people and help them with their own walks in whatever way that manifests itself. And just maybe it's taking something complicated to understand and helping them, understand in a simpler way, kind of what some of the truth is, and not get caught up in some of the confusion and the lies, and distill it down. I think God kind of put me in a situation to spend 30 years learning how to take complicated stuff and make it simple to understand. And then, as long as you care about other people, it's kind of like you said, as long as your heart's in the right place and you just want to help people, if you can help them in that way and they're interested and want to learn there, I think there's a lot of work to be done with the time I've got left, hopefully. And then I'm really excited about helping develop my children and the people I meet through them.
I love that. Cool. This is great. Oh, also, you forgot to add, in 2026, you're looking forward to going to a World Cup game with
Yes,
me
that's
in
right.
Atlanta.
Absolutely. And if Colombia's playing the U.S., we'll travel to the final because it won't be in Atlanta. I think we'll have a semifinal. And
Yeah. Well, Colombia's not even going to the World Cup this year, so it'll be like, yeah, Argentina. I'm cheering for Argentina, for Messi. I'm cheering for Messi this year.
Yeah, that would be a nice little cap for him.
Yeah, yeah. Are you a Messi fan or a Ronaldo fan?
I like Messi.
Oh, okay, then we could definitely be friends. Oh, thank God. I was about to say, oh, this has been a good episode. Thank you so much.
No, I look at what he's done, and I'm just, I grew up a Pele guy, right? 70s,
Oh.
But I look at what Messi does, and it's just, it's inspiring,
Yeah, it is.
And he's got a soccer IQ and an ability and a work ethic. It's kind of that whole package, right?
Yeah.
It makes people around him better too, which is a sign of a good player.
That's right. And the lessons that we've talked about, he displays them, right? If you're willing to just put your head down and work and not complain and
right,
just do what you can do best, it's probably going to work out well for you. And look at him. It worked out good for him. Well, that worked for you. So
There we
that's
go.
awesome. Oh man. We can wind the clocks back here for a sec and go back and start talking about some Southwestern stuff if you're okay with that.
Sure.
If that's all right. Unless you have some more thoughts or closing thoughts on anything with your current life.
No, we're good.
Sounds good. I'm going to give a couple quick shout outs and then we can move on. Guys, if you got done selling books just now this last summer, Seth and Zane at Elevate Wellness are doing another Sizzler Shred, their annual Sizzler Shred. So basically what that means is if you guys are looking to get into your best shape possible, going to Sizzler, if you're going to Sizzler, if you won that trip, last year they had 55 people there and they gave away over like $4,500 in cash prizes. Plus they donated $1,000 to the service project. And so they're looking to double the participants this year. The bigger the group, the more people are there. And so make sure you guys sign up so you guys can have, you're feeling your best in your mind and in your body when you go to Sizzler this year. More information on that, click on the link below when when the episode comes out, and you can sign up for that or get more info on there. So would love those guys. Thanks a lot, Seth. And then also a quick shout out from Cardinal Senior Benefits. This is for people who are looking for something to work at or if you're leaving the book field and you're like, this is it. I need to look for something else. This is my last summer. Quintin Roberts has some advice for you. Check out his company if you guys want more information, but here's his tip of the day. Most people entering insurance focus too much on contract percentages. Be sure to look out for the culture, mentorship and management, and the overall performance of the group. I feel like this is very in theme of what we've been talking about in this episode. But people fail in the industry of insurance because they don't have a good grasp on their money. Most social and relational issues in life are due to financial struggles. When you join a job, you should, you see it as something you want to marry. Treat it well, and it will return that favor to you. And I feel like, Steve, you probably have something to say about that after 30 years of that. It's pretty sound advice, would you say?
I would. Yes, I would agree.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you so much. Let's wind the clocks back. Go back to 1983 at Georgia Tech. And how the heck did you get into this whole thing from the beginning? Who talked to you about it? How did you get into Southwestern starting out?
Well, I finished high school in the spring. I was 17. I enrolled at Georgia Tech. I was about a year younger than a lot of my friends that were freshmen. There was a guy in my dorm hall who was also a freshman, but he had sold books the year before as a high school senior, which is kind of unique. And so
Wow.
as we were getting to know each other, about the first week or two I was in school, he said that he had done a summer job where you could make $5,000 in the summer. And I was like, wow, I'd made maybe $3,000 cutting grass the year before, and 5,000 sounded like a lot of money back then. So he said, would you come meet a friend of mine and hear about the job? And I was like, yeah, I'm a pretty amiable guy. If you ask me to do something, I'm probably going to say yes. And so, yeah, I didn't really have an interest in getting a job. I was more saying yes just to be, I was meeting this guy and just, why would I say no, right? So I
Yeah,
met Ken Barr,
open-mindedness.
who had been recruited by John Loughran and the Blitz group. And Ken explained the job to me and showed me the books. And he said, if you can work hard, study hard, and be teachable, there's no reason you can't make $5,000. And I said, okay, so then I'll do it. And that was in September, like the first month I was in college. And so again, my student manager had been a high school senior the year before, so he wasn't your, Todd McWhorter type sales manager keeping up with me. I was skiing in the spring, the Christmas break in North Carolina, and I heard a couple of people talking about this job that kind of sounded like that one I'd signed up to do 3 months ago, but I'd kind of forgotten because the guy wasn't keeping up with me, right? And I said, I think I'm doing that this year. What is that? And so anyway, come sales school time, I obviously went out and worked that first summer in 1983. And so that was the last year, or the first year the books were maroon. The year before they were blue. So even in deliveries, we had blue books shipped to us, and we had hard cases. You had a place to sit. Then they went to the soft cases after that. So you could tell someone who sold books in '83 if they were a guy because they had no hair on the outside of their calf from swinging that sample case into their calf all summer for 13 weeks. So you knew which hand they carried the book in, depending on where the hair was missing on their calf. So that was back
Beautiful.
in '83.
Still doesn't grow there. It's still it's still a bald spot there on the calf. Oh my gosh. Where'd you go that summer? Where were you at?
I was living in Columbus, Ohio,
Oh,
and I was, for those who are from there, I was in Bexley, which is near the Columbus School for Girls. My first day was in Pinkerington, Ohio, small town. I didn't have a car, so my student manager would drop me off. You're going to love this, Andres. So just to give you some perspective, I'm different now than I was in '83. When I was in 7th grade at a Catholic school, my teacher was so excited. She said, Steve, that paper you just turned in, it's so amazing. I've gotten permission for you to read it in front of the whole school. And my answer was, I won't do it and you can't make me. Pick someone else. So I didn't do it, right? So I'd listen to someone else read something, and I sat there in the bleachers going, thank God that wasn't me. So that was, then you go 5 years later, here I'm out going to sell books.
Talking to random people.
And I'm from Atlanta my whole life, and now I'm in Ohio, living on my own. And so this is the part you're going to love. Dan drops me off at 7:30 in the morning, rolls down the window, and at the top of his lungs, he yells, books for sale, as loud as he can, and then drives off laughing. And I'm horrified that he just woke up the whole neighborhood, and I'm standing there with a sample case by myself, and he's not coming back for 15 hours.
Dogs barking, babies crying, and you're knocking on doors now.
Yeah.
And you said this was Dan Moore?
No, it was Dan Gustafson.
Dan Gustafson. Sorry, it glitched on my ear when you said the last name. And I was like, okay. Oh man, that's so hilarious. That's hilarious.
And then the other part
is horn.
So I didn't know if I could sell anything. So when you said about how you got started, there's 3 things I remember. I remember the guy yelling books for sale at the top of his lungs at 7:30 in the morning, which horrified me. I remember telling my mom and dad I was going to go sell books. And my dad's comment was, so first of all, my best friend's dad told him, I could never sell anything, neither can you. It's not going to work. Well, he finished number 10. That was David Stanley. My dad had the opposite approach. My dad's just different than his dad. My dad said, Steve, even if you never sell a book, it's going to be a great experience. Then he leaned in and said, but guess what? You're going to do real well. So that's what he told me before I went out there. And then my first summer, my first week, I didn't know if I could sell, but I promised my sales manager I wouldn't quit. So that was off the table. It just, if I give you my word, I told my kids, I said, the hardest part was because I gave my word, I couldn't quit. If I didn't give my word, I would have quit 100%. That's the only reason I didn't quit, but I gave my word. So I said, I won't quit. So I said, well, if nothing else, I'm going to win the Gold Seal Gold Award. I know I can do that. And by Thursday, the cops stopped me at like 8 at night and wouldn't let me sell for the rest of the time. And so I started getting worried. How am I going to make up these hours? Because I'm kind of a literal guy. If you say it's 80 plus, it's 80 plus. I gotta make up 4 hours somewhere. I've only got 2 days to do it. And so I called my sales manager, and Craig Soder, who you probably know. Craig was recruiting in Ohio, so he knew all the Ohio stuff. Craig was in his office. He goes, hey, Craig, I got a first-year kid here who's selling in Ohio. He's had a problem with the cops. Would you talk to him? He's like, sure, put him on. So Craig's never met me. Craig gets on the phone and goes, hey, man, what happened? I said, I'm down here in Pickerington, Ohio, and the cops stopped me, and they won't let me sell for the rest of the day. He goes, oh, dude, is this your 4th day? I said, yeah. He goes, oh, you're done. You ought to go to the movies. Your summer's shot, pal. And I said, that's a bunch of crap. My summer's not shot. Put Lockroom back on the phone. Who the hell is this guy? I said, I need to figure out how to get in 4 more hours. And then after that, Craig told me, he goes, dude, when I heard that, I looked at Locker and I goes, I think you got a good one, And so anyway, when I got back at the end of my first summer, there was 0% chance I was coming back because I didn't like it. It was hard. I didn't like it.
It's hard.
And I don't have to do it again. The tuition at Georgia Tech annually was $920. I could afford to pay for college. Rooms, I had $200 in rent. It wasn't a big deal. And so I remember going back to the warehouse to return the books that were extra. And somebody said, "You see that guy there? That was his 8th summer." And here's my exact thought. What a loser. That guy couldn't find another job. He had to do this 7 more times. That was what I thought of the guy. And I don't even know his name. I just remember some dude was in his 8th year, and I thought he was a loser because he couldn't get another job. And so when I was checking out with Loughran, Craig Soder made a point to come find me because he goes, "Hey, did that kid ever make it, the one I talked to on Thursday?" And Loughran goes, "Yeah, he'll be in tomorrow checking out. Why don't you," his name is Steve Herlihy, "why don't you come say hello to him?" And so I'm talking to Soder, and he goes, "Do you remember talking to me?" And I go, "I remember talking to you." And he goes, "How'd your summer go?" And I said, "Yeah, it was great, man. You know." He goes, "You coming back?" I said, "No." And he said, "Can I ask you a couple questions?" Doesn't that sound like a sales manager?
Oh man.
So my first
40
thought
years
was,
later and things have not changed.
my first thought was skip Nashville because that's where all the sales managers live, and they're the best salesmen on the planet. They're going to try to talk you into it.
Of course.
But I wanted the check, so I didn't skip Nashville. So Craig said, "So you're not coming back?" I said, "No." He goes, "Can I ask you a couple questions?" I said, "Sure." He goes, "Did you make any money?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Was it more than you've ever made?" I go, "Yeah, in fact, it was." He said, "Did you learn anything?" I goes, "Yeah." He said, "Is that the kind of thing that you learned enough that in a career job interview you would tell somebody you did it?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Okay, good. I'm glad you had that experience." He goes, "Have you thought about this question? When you tell somebody it was the most money you ever made and it was the best experience you'd ever had, and then you didn't go back, what are you going to tell them?"
Yikes.
I said, "I guess I'd have to tell him I'm a big fat, I'll see you next summer." And I shook his hand. And Loughran, he goes, "Hey, Loughran, he's coming back." That was the beginning of 9 years.
Oh my gosh, Craig Soder, may he rest in peace. I'll drink to that.
Yep. Yep.
I'll drink.
So we always remained good friends. But so that was the beginning of. I never thought it would be 9 years, but that's how
Incredible.
it ended up.
So now you're sitting there, you're like, "Oh, I gotta go back." What was that essential like? Because after that you started growing, and so that's actually
Well,
not as common
it's
as
pretty
you
easy
think, but
because I knew if I knew I knew. Well, first of all, I told him I was coming back. So what does that mean? I'm coming back. So I
yeah,
told him I
because you
was.
committed. You're a man of your word.
And now I've got 9 months to prepare, and I know what to prepare for. So I started studying, and I just studied and studied and studied. And so I took that approach every year I sold, and I increased every single year I did the job. 9
That's
straight years.
crazy. That's
And
not common.
6 of the 9 were over 1,100 units. And so they had a bronze growth award, silver and gold. And then they didn't have things for diamond, double diamond, and triple diamond. So Dan Moore bought me this gold Montbach pen in 1991 after my 6th 1,100 unit increase.
That's
So
wild.
still have that. So I haven't lost that. But he kept trying to find it. I mean, one year he bought me some diamond cufflinks. I can't remember what the second one was. The third one was the gold pen. So he, I finished my 8th year, and I'd finished graduate school. So interesting. When I went to South Carolina for grad school, they have a mandatory summer internship. I'm getting a master's in business. So I had to go have a conversation with them. I said, "Okay, this is a business course, so obviously you understand what opportunity cost is. Let me explain something to you. If I have to do that internship, it's going to cost me $35,000 because that's what I make in the summer." I
Yeah.
said, "So I'm not going to do it. Here's what I'm going to do. You tell me what the internship is, and I will knock it out during the school year, and I'll be done before finals. Then I'm going to go make some money." And they went, "We've never done that before." I said, "We're about to do it this year because I'm not giving up that kind of money. So what do I need to do between now and the end of the?" So I did my internship during the school year so I could go sell again. So I sold them on that. It was successful. And then I was all done and I was ready to, and then I finished grad school, and I was making a couple $1,000s a week back in the late 80s, early 90s. So I figured might as well go sell for another year. I'm making more than all my friends with
Sure.
graduate degrees. So I sold my 8th year and then I was done. They used to have a TV show called Eight is Enough. And that was like my mantra, eight is enough. And Dan Moore called me and Dan said, "Hey, I understand you finished grad school and you sold again. And I guess you're going to be out looking for a career job and all that kind of stuff." He said, I wanted to know if you would consider doing the company a favor. I said, "What's that?" And he said, "Would you consider writing an advanced sales manual for the company based on what you've learned over your 8 years?" I said, "Yeah, I mean, you guys have given me a lot. I don't mind giving back." So I moved to Nashville. I spent 4 months working for Dan and did an advanced sales manual in 1991. Well, imagine when I finished, about the time to go sell again.
You
I'm sure
got to
that
go
was
sell
now.
books.
That's why he probably didn't ask me to come do it from October to December, right? So
Right.
then I went out and sold that next year. And so that was the year I met my wife. It was her second year. So that was the best part of the 9th year.
That is so cool. Wow. I
And
got so many questions.
I did manage to finish number one my 8th and 9th year. So
That's pretty solid. That's a good year. That 7th year must have been tough with Zizzy and Rose and doing their thing. That
well, I
crazy
still did
7th
over
year.
9,000 units. In the student category, I was number one. They were both in
You
the honorary
stud.
category. So I think I finished over
Stud.
60,000 units, which is pretty solid for getting out of school with no debt and 6 figures in the bank.
Not bad. Not bad at all. What a career. Well, and that summer must have been nuts because I mean everybody was. I feel like wasn't Michelle Maloney too was doing really
Yeah.
well. You were crushing, and then
Well,
those
here's
two
the
guys. It
crazy
must have been
thing
a
is
fun
my
summer.
my 8th and 9th year, it was harder to finish number one every week in my group than it was to finish number one in the company. Because I'd come in with 1,000 units and Shannon Sibbitt would have 1,050. Then I'd come in with 990 and Dave Stanley would have 1,000. Then I'd come in with 1,100. Oh, finally, I beat him this week. I mean, every week it was Brad Nolan was my roommate, and half the
Wow.
weeks he was number one that week, and about half of them I was number one. But we were going. He finished number four, and I finished number one. I mean, it was hard to finish number one in that group that week as opposed to the whole company. That was the competition. So back to Blitz Eagle. So John Loughran
Oh
started
yeah.
the Blitz organization. John went to the University of Florida. His best friend he sold books with was Tom Boyd. So Tom started the Eagle organization. So you had two best friend sales managers. One had Blitz, one had Eagle. But because they were best friends, we just did everything together because the friends wanted to do everything together. So the company would have a get back recruiters. They would have their own in Destin, Florida, and we would just go down there and do it ourselves. And we like to play a little bit.
Oh.
So it was the two buddies that went to college together and sold together that decided just to do everything together as a group. So even though we were two separate organizations, you know what? During the school year, I do lots of stuff with both groups, just because they would combine and do stuff together.
That makes sense. That makes sense. That's a good. I didn't know that part of history. Mark Rao is a big Eagle Blitz name, and the Florida connection. Now it all makes sense. Everything
Yeah.
just
So
made
my
sense in my
business
head.
partner Brian Friedman hired Mark Rao.
Oh, okay.
He's my partner at Wellspring.
That is so cool.
Brian
It's so
finished
funny how
number
you
one
connect,
twice as
right?
well. Brian was number one in like 86, 87. So he had a couple of years at number one too.
Wild.
Yeah.
That is such a crazy. I mean, I feel like the late 80s, early 90s, even like there was a chunk I feel like of like 10 years there where everybody was selling a ton of books. It was just
Yeah.
such a like there's so many big names that came out of that era. And then yeah, when you started in 83, was Lee McCroskey still selling? I feel like that was
No,
like you guys
he was sales manager.
at
The
that point.
the number one student that year was Tommy McKernan. He was from North Carolina. I think he worked for Soder. Tommy did.
Nah, that
Um,
makes sense.
and but I think the years that I was selling, Blitz or Eagle had the number one salesman like 17 out of 20 years or something. I mean,
That's crazy.
trying to finish number one in your organization was tough.
Right.
That was hard.
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, it's just
And
brutal.
and the funny thing is, it wasn't ever about the money. You come in with 1,000 units, and your best friend did 1,040, and you're pissed off,
Yeah, yeah.
you know. And we all did that to each other back and forth. But it was just the camaraderie, and it was the competition. It wasn't the money. You just wanted to win.
That's
Wanted to
yeah, you just
want to say they
kick
outsold you.
their ass. Yeah, I remember that feeling when you're in the circle on Sunday. You're like, no, I'm not coming. Your roommates are like, no, 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 no. This is even if it's by 1 unit. You're like, I beat you.
Well, that's
I
probably. I
remember
mean,
that.
I never had a week I worked under 80 hours. I couldn't afford to, because
Right.
I had somebody right there that conceivably, even if I'm having my best week ever, conceivably, I knew it might not be enough.
Yep. That is such a funny thing. It's so that's the beautiful thing about this show, and one of the things I've learned to appreciate about my conversations with people on here is that I mean, this was in 1983, so this is 30 years before I sold books, right?
Yeah,
And nothing really. I mean, the technology has changed, the product itself has changed, but the experience itself, even the
right,
culture of the company, kind of has changed over the even last 10, 20 years. But like the the type of people that do it and that enjoy doing it,
right,
and enjoy is a loose word, but that do it well,
right.
that I relate to that so hard. Like you can't, if you get beat by you're sitting there on Wednesday and you want to take a little longer to get to that next door, but then you're like, nah, Josh is sitting down, he's writing up a whole bag right now. I gotta go to the next door.
Well,
I gotta
imagine if you
I gotta
came into
kick his
every
ass.
Sunday meeting and you were 300 units ahead of everybody, right?
Yeah,
I didn't have that experience.
no.
You know, it just wasn't that way in our group, which made it really fun.
Yeah,
Because you knew you really had to give your best to be in the running, to have a shot.
beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Question for you. When you look at that pen, that gold pen, what does that make you feel? Like what do you think of? What does that where does that take you? Like where does your brain go when you see that thing?
Well, one of the things is it reminds me of my friendship with Dan and just what an
Mm,
amazing person he is. Now, interestingly, I met his brother-in-law before I sold books. Because you know how when you recruit somebody, they would look for an alumni. Maria's
right.
brother, Jose Tavares, was in Atlanta, and I got to meet him as just an alumni, not knowing his sister was Dan's wife. Or
Maria.
so when I
Yeah.
met Maria, it's like I met your brother, and then I met Dan. So it's interesting that I actually, of all that clan, I met Dan's brother-in-law first, then Dan, then Maria. But
Right.
when you meet a family like that, and you realize that his wife is sharper than he is, and he's one of the
Yes.
sharper people you know.
Which is saying so much.
I
Yeah,
know,
yes.
I
It's,
know it
it's
is.
crazy. Yeah. But
So,
Maria's so amazing.
oh, like I said, no one's going to doubt me when I say he married up. And
Yeah.
so, that's just the way it is.
He'd be the first to tell you.
I Because it's true.
Yeah.
But anyway, it reminds me of Dan and his family, because he didn't have to take the time to go buy that. It wasn't like in the stock of go hand this to the guy or the gal that did this. He had to go put some thought into it, right?
Yeah.
And I appreciated that about him. It's his character, who he is. And so, and then it just reminds me of the lessons that I learned and the things that I could take from it. It's just a reminder that work hard, study hard, be teachable, focus on the things you can control. It's what Ananta Hajibu taught me, is that it's hard to be nervous when your mind's on service.
Yep.
In fact, Ananta's son lived with us for 2 years at our house when he was at Georgia
Oh,
Tech. Yeah. And so he was tutoring our kids in math. We live 3 miles from campus, and then my daughter was going off to college. She decided to give her room to Ananta's son without asking. Oh, by the way, Dad, Jacob's going to live with y'all. Oh, great. He lived with us
cool.
for 2 years. It was awesome. We loved it.
So
So,
cool.
but it just reminds me of a lot of those things that I learned, that have been so helpful. I remember early in my career at Wellspring, which was called First Meridian, I'm sitting there talking to one of the wealthiest guys in Houston, and I'm going into the meeting thinking what a great client this could be, and I'm nervous. I want to make the sale. I want to get him as a client, right? And then I would remind myself, it's not about you. Start thinking about how you can help his family with your process and how he's the one that's going to benefit, not you. And then all the anxiety, all the nervousness just went away. Well, I learned that from selling books. That's just not something that's taught in school. They don't teach that in MBA school. They don't teach that at Georgia Tech. It's just not taught, and so it's the mindset, and it's the confidence and the things that you learned that you modeled over year that you can internalize, that you can draw on for any different type of situation.
That is, hats off to you, sir. That was beautiful. That was beautifully said. Probably the biggest lesson in the actual realm of sales. Like if you're just looking at what you learn in sales, besides like the numbers and the work hard, like before any of that stuff, if you don't have your head in the right place and your heart in the right place when going to do a sales job, you're probably not gonna, even if you work the hours, you're probably not gonna succeed, or you'll do okay. But like when you start really not making it about you and about the people that you're potentially helping, something changed. Some change happens in you.
Have you ever heard Dan Moore talk about the quadrant of a conscious competent, an unconscious competent, a conscious incompetent, and an unconscious incompetent? Have you ever heard that?
Yeah, but you should share this because he would do this in his banana talk, at least when he would come on campus. But it's beautiful. It's cool. But please share.
Well, when we were talking about that, he was explaining, goes, Steve, you're in the quadrant, you're a conscious competent. You understand why it works because you've studied it and you understand it. It's the way God made your mind to work. Sometimes, take Dave Rosen or some of these guys, it's unconscious, but they have all the competency, all the ability in the world, but that's how they were wired, right? And so, I was fortunate enough to go, I've worked with Dave for a day. I've worked with Mike Capagrossi. I've worked with these guys and watched them all sell. And I've watched how they do it. I worked with Hayden Flowers. And I don't know if you know Hayden, but he sold completely. I wouldn't recommend this. You can't even teach what he did. It had zero relevance to anything you learned in sales school. But it worked for him. Oh. He was an unconscious competent. But he could never teach you selling. That wasn't his skill, but he could outsell you, right? And so that was why Dan wanted me to kind of put this together, and I interviewed all these guys from the 80s and early 90s and tried to figure out what they did best so I could kind of get this best practices, thing put together, but interestingly, unlike the funny stories, do you know the song by Meatloaf, Dashboard Lights?
I can't say, I will not confidently say I do. Okay. I probably heard it, but I don't know.
Anyway, Dave has just made a presentation and he's kind of laying on the floor talking to him, and they're at the point of decision. The mom and dad are kicking it back and forth, and Dave's showing like $600 worth of books. It's not 2 handbooks,
right?
And he just waltzes over to the piano and he sits down and starts playing. And he starts playing that song. And he's like, I got to know right now, do you need them? Will you use them forever? Do you love them? No. And he just started making it up and singing and they're losing it laughing. And they're like, of course we're going to get them. You don't teach that to anybody. But he read
that's out of the sales talk.
He knew that if he could just get them to laugh and move and get them off point and make it not such a big deal, it was done. He closed the sale. You can't teach that, right?
No. That's crazy.
But it was just fun to sit there. He probably never did that ever again. But I was sitting there with him when he did it. We laughed all the way to the car. I was like, that was brilliant. That was fun to watch. So
that's a brilliant example. I love that. Just starts playing the piano.
It goes back to, like I said, I know I can't coach up an A player, but some of your Southwestern coaches can. You just got to know who you are, right? So you don't have to be a conscious competent. You could be unconscious. It does, you just have to understand where you fall. Then you kind of figure out who do you get to teach it. And then sometimes you take a guy and say, just be a jackrabbit, go set high numbers and just bring the belief up. They're not going to learn how to do it from you, but the belief level is going to go up because of you. Right. And that was part of Loughran's philosophy. He would unleash a couple of us early and say, I only want you to focus on big numbers early, 500, 600, 700 units out of the gate, and get the belief level up in the group. And that was your contribution as opposed to running the meeting. Right. So
just go be a workhorse.
A way to organize a summer that worked.
Brilliant. Dane, that is such a good just such a good lesson in any sort of management where it's like there's different kinds of people who can do different kinds of things, and just it's learning to understand what they can bring to the table and then really harnessing that and
Well, I sold books
allowing
for
them to
Trey
be.
George. I know you interviewed Trey.
Oh yeah,
You know, Trey
I was
never
about to
made
ask
any
you.
quit ever because he decided they can't, right? Trey
Yeah,
decided. And then he communicated that and he wouldn't let them give up on themselves, right? That was Trey's
yeah,
gift. So Trey plugged
yeah,
in and kept a lot of our guys on the field, right?
yeah,
And then, Dave Stanley would plug in and go hit 900 units and everyone's belief would go up, right? Then someone else would show how to teach the approach. And here's three different guys all working together to make the organization run, right?
wow.
And
That goes back to what you said earlier, where it's like if you got a bunch of different A players that you can give up some of the pie to, and then just let them play their best,
yeah,
right? You play the violin, they play the cello. You need a violin
yeah,
and a cello for a symphony, right? And you
that's
need a
right.
trumpet player, and you need a whatever. And so, if you find the best of each, or at least people who are good at that, and let them run with it, the whole organization scales a lot faster because
Right.
it takes responsibility for you for one, but more than anything, it's good for the org because everybody has a visible person they identify with, right? Your people that were more like you, who are the studiers, they can relate to you, so great, right? But then there's another person who is just a crazy person like Dave Rosen, who just makes it look like it's just breathing, and you're like, oh, all right, well, you can relate to that. Just such a good way to scale and to grow an organization. Brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, Pat
So
O'Segan's birthday was yesterday. I don't know if you know Pat, but we sold
yeah,
together.
he was on the show. He was on
Yeah.
the
Well,
show too.
anyway, I was thinking about him because his birthday, and I followed Pat one day, and he had 10 customers. No, excuse me, 15 customers, 10 units each, two handbooks, 15 times. Just through the day. It's all he was showing was $60, $80 for the books. Boom, 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 boom. And we just kept running into good situations. He'd close it. You leave the day, it's a 150 unit day. You're feeling pretty good. And you were just selling two books, and it's all different, right? And so then you go follow Hayden Flowers, and he's talking about some educational system you never heard of, but you want one, and it probably costs $2,000, but you got to have it,
Right.
And
Right.
and
Because
there's
your kids need that.
there's a 180 unit day, but totally different, right? And so,
Oh,
but Andres, and I'm sure there's some kids still out there selling. So I had two thoughts that I wanted to share with them, if I could.
yeah, absolutely,
Um,
please.
so I have a question for you. Do you remember your first summer going through the sales talk and getting to the close, and you had absolutely no clue if they were going to buy?
Oh yeah. Yes, sir.
Do you remember
Yes,
that pit in
sir.
your stomach?
And you're just like, oh gosh, I have to look down at my pen.
But you had it so memorized, you already knew what you were going to say, but internally you're thinking, I have no clue how this is going to go, right?
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
So, so I figured out how to make that go away forever. So that's not a good feeling. So anyone that
No.
has that feeling, it's no fun, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I'm going to tell them why they have that feeling. And the reason is they did all the talking up until the point of going to the close. They did all the talking and not enough listening.
Mhm.
So once they learn how to follow the sales talk, and in addition to that, interject questions as opposed to statements, that goes away forever because you never get to the close without knowing if they're going to get them. Because what happens is when you sell that way, 10 minutes in, you already know the answer. The rest is perfunctory to get the sale done. So for those people that have that pit in their stomach, they probably don't know how to get rid of it. Well, that's how you get rid of it. And so the second just bit of advice, and this is just at a macro level. So if you just kind of take this as to like a formula, what does it take to make a sale at Southwestern? And so the first thing I did is I bought a cheap watch that had a countdown timer, and I set it at 10 minutes. And the second I walked in, I hit it because I knew 10 minutes in, I had to make a decision. Are they buying? And if they are, I'm staying and I'm wrapping up in 20 minutes. Or if they aren't, I'm leaving and getting pre-approach and leaving, and that's a win. If I don't have
Right.
what I'm about to share, then I recognized it within 10 minutes and I was gone. So I had time to go sell 8 or 10 or 12 people that day. That's just, but
Brilliant.
if you're in a situation, if there's more than one decision maker at home and they're not in the same room, you're not going to make a sale. You have to understand that before you go in. So whatever it takes to get them in the room, that's your number one goal. It doesn't matter. Whatever it takes, you got to get mom and dad in the same room, period. If only one of them's there, obviously by definition, you've got them in the room. That has to happen. Number two, I'm not going to say it's a must, but it's going to get you 90% of the way. The kid's got to like you. And I tell people, if you're in college and you can't figure out how to get a kid to like you, you're not trying hard enough. But mentally, you got to be gauging yourself. Have I engaged with the kids in a way that they like me? It's just paramount. So however you do that, figure that out. Number three, there's only one objection. I used to think there were 5 or 6. There's only one. You know what it is, right?
Are you interested?
What's the one objection?
I'm not. I have no idea. I'm going to let you say
whether or not they'd use the product.
Oh, I love that.
That's the only one. If they will use the product, they can find the money. If they can use the product, they don't have to talk to their spouse. If they're going to use the product, they're going to get it. If they're not going to use the product, they're not going to buy. It is the only objection. That's it. So your goal is either to get the kids or the parent to say they'd use it. It's your goal. And that's all done in the setup and questions and figuring out what kind of kid you're talking to. Kid hates school, just talk about how it makes it quicker, easier, so you don't have to deal with it. Kid loves school, talk about how it makes them do great in college. You got to get the kid to say he'd use it. If they're little kids, you got to get the parent to say they'd use it. That's your goal. So once you have the decision makers and once you have a high energy thing where they're liking you, and then you get someone to say they'd use it, the kid, the parent, or both, then you can do all that in 10 minutes. If you can't accomplish that in 10 minutes, I'm telling you right now, you're not making a sale. Let me rephrase that. You're going to sell 1 out of 50. I don't do those odds. I just don't do those. I leave and I go sell somebody where I can make that happen in 10 minutes. And so that right there helps people not have this pit in their stomach. It's not a lot. Leaving in 10 minutes is not a loss. It's a win. Staying 20 minutes and not making sale is a loss.
Yes.
So you're having unforced errors, and it's your fault, not the people who didn't buy. It was your job to find out if those elements were there and then to create them if they're not there, right? And then to help them see how they'd use them. And then it's kind of like I spent 4 months putting that information together on how to drill down on all of that to make it happen, right? So one thing I'm proud of is that Dan told me when I left selling, I'd sold more product than anyone that he could find historically. But now there's a bunch of people historically have sold more. So I'm hoping that this material filtered in somehow and helped some of those guys.
Yeah, I can assure you, at least through 2016, it did. Which I'm assuming if it made it this far or made it that far, it's made it so far. I never had thought about it of like, would they use them or not? That's such an interesting way of thinking about it. Cause like, to me, it's always like, if they're willing to like sit down with you, cause sometimes I would sell the product without the kid being there. But you know, that now that you explain this, it's absolutely makes sense. If the kid is, I think back at every time where I was able to have the kid say that they would totally use it. It was a very high chance of closing. The only time that wouldn't happen is if like you had one of those situations, which would be super sad, where the parents didn't believe in the kid, and you could see that, and like, you know, those moments where you're like, I'm never going to be that dad.
But you know,
I just told my son
what I learned how to do is I learned to turn it on the parent. And basically, I would say, if you had this in the house and your child asked for your help, would you be willing to use it to help them? Would you be willing to do it?
Oh,
God. And if they say no, they're not going to say no. So then I'm going to find a way to get one of the two, or I usually got both. I'm going to find a way to say they'd use it. Then I knew I had the sale. Because if they're going to use it, they'll find the money. I sold in Mississippi, and in deliveries, I'm telling you, people did not have a credit card, didn't have any money.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
And my question was, do you have a relative that owns a Discover card? Well, yeah, my aunt's got one of those. Where does she live? She's down the street. Do you know her number? Call her. See if you can put the balance on her card. You can pay her back next month when I'm back at tech. You know, if you use it, you're going to get them. And so I've sold poor. It doesn't matter. Now, I've had the people with all the money in the world, and if they didn't think they'd use it, I told them not to buy them. You don't need a dust collector. You need that like a hole in the head. But I positioned in a way where I got them wanting to use them, right? They want, you know. So anyway, but that's lots of practice, and it's understanding the elements that have to be present to give you the highest probability of making a sale. Once you understand it, and it took me maybe 6 years to figure that out on my own, But once I figured it out, I just applied it and I kept getting better every year.
And then you turned it into a science. And then
I never had a year that I didn't sell more than last year because every year I'd learned something more, right? But I'll tell you, by my last year, it was hard to have a better closing percentage. I couldn't work any more hours. I truly understood how to do it. And I was selling pretty big packages. So, I did outsell my peers, but it was getting harder and harder to keep getting better and better.
growing. Yeah.
What am I going to improve in, right? The last thing I'd improve in was just more books per person. That was about, I was down to that, So,
Wow. That's so like broken. You're good. You're the 30 years of your life where you've spent taking complex things and breaking it down to simple right here. This is it. This is you're showing this now. That is so well done. So well thought.
well, I think once people understand it and then it kind of makes sense, then you kind of know. And then I got really good, Andres, at self evaluation. I'd leave a sale and I don't lie to myself. I'd say, what could I do different? And then if I found a mistake, I go, yep, you blew it there. That's fine. Self correct. Don't do it again. Right. Don't do it in the next house. But a lot of people aren't honest with themselves. You got to be honest with yourself. And so if you think about it, if you self correct every time, you're continually getting better. Right. And just be
Right.
this. I told my son this the other day. There was a guy I hired named Bruce Hembry. I have no idea what Bruce is doing today, but I do know that twice he followed me on a Thursday, 2 different times. And both times I was sitting on over 500 Wednesday night. Oh, do you hear that beeping?
Yeah, I was gonna say, is that me or you?
No, it's me. Hang on one second.
My tea's ready. Or someone's breaking into my house. I don't know.
Our power went off and my digital clock got reset, and now it's on. It thinks it's the morning or something.
Oh man,
It was from a power outage.
it's 5:59.
So interestingly, this was in my probably 8th year, and both times I know I was on over 500 by Wednesday night. I was on track for 1,000 both times. Both days he followed me 4 weeks apart. I can tell you exactly how many units I sold both days. 10. I had a 10 unit day, and then 4 weeks later he followed me. I was over 500 again by Wednesday. I had a 10. And I can honestly tell you, I would self-evaluate coming out of every house. I wouldn't have changed one single thing. I did not run into any buyers that day. I didn't miss once. They just weren't there that day. So I didn't feel bad at all. It's like, hey, Bruce, what you're seeing is exactly what I do every day to hit 130, 190, 204. It's the exact same stuff. We haven't hit that situation yet. He would see me ask those questions and be leaving in 6 minutes. He's like, why'd you leave? I'm like, well, first of all, she couldn't make a decision, or 2, the kids weren't into it enough. I know they wouldn't use it. There's no reason. I don't get paid to show books. I only get paid to sell them. They aren't buying. Let's get out of here. Let's be polite,
Right.
ask for pre-approach, and leave. And that's a win. So my point is, when I got really good at self-analysis, and I was honest with myself. I didn't lie to myself like, that lady was it's her fault. No. And there was plenty of times I blew it, and I would say, okay, that's fine. Just don't do it again. Right. Or my energy was off. I was tired. It's like, you need to find a way just to amp it up a little, because that might not have been the reason, but it didn't help you, so it was a lot of that understanding what the elements were, and then working it into the talk that I was taught, and then understanding how it worked together. And then I got to the point where I was looking for these situations. I had one summer I sold my first demo every day of the summer.
That's crazy.
Because I was never tired driving to my first house. So I was up,
Right.
I'd find someone. They usually have, here's another one. If anyone ever offers you something to drink, whether you're thirsty or not, take it, even if you don't drink it. There's something social about an offer and an acceptance. It's like a win. And I remember in rural Kentucky where the water was brown out of the well. I put it up like this. I'm telling you right now, I didn't drink it, but I didn't refuse it either.
Yeah, you got to say yes. That's really, especially. I loved it when Did you love this feeling where they would offer you food?
Oh yeah.
Do you want a sandwich or something? You're like, oh, you're so buying. So
Well,
I
my
might as well
first
just
summer,
bring
I
my own
was
check.
so focused on the 80 plus hours, I turned stuff down because I didn't want to waste any time. I learned that wasn't the right decision. I also used to not take breaks. And then I learned I was more effective to break my day into thirds and to force myself into a 15-minute break. And I had to force myself to do it because I didn't want to get behind. I wanted to outsell
Right.
people. But I was better with a 4.5 hour focus than I was with a 13.5 hour focus. So
That's
taking that 15, 15, 30, which I guess adds up to an hour, strategically pulled out of the day, strategically, I was better.
smart. And that's interesting because that's something that this isn't often talked about enough. But I feel like we in the especially when you're in book mode, you get so guilty about even like just taking a quick pause to just breathe or something like that. And it's like, no, it's okay. You have to like take those breaks seriously and really just unplug for even in those 15 minutes that you were taking, because otherwise your brain will burn itself out from just never turning off. Like you have to give it a quick second to just restart and then go
Well,
back.
well, think about
Smart.
playing soccer. We probably played 2 games a week in high school, Tuesday, Friday,
Yeah.
and it's 90
Yeah.
minutes. So it's not hard to focus, right? Imagine being a Major League Baseball player playing 30 preseason games, 162 games, and trying to focus in every game. You can't do it.
No.
Nobody is completely plugged in. You can't.
Yeah.
And they've proven in business the people that take vacations and get away from work are more productive.
Right.
So it just
Oh,
applied that back down to the book field, just taking those little breaks strategically. That was on purpose. It made me more effective.
right. That's genius. Oh man, we've talked about that a couple of times on the show where it's like you got to work hard, and when you're on, you're on. You can't be, so that way you don't be distracted about thinking about food or a break. But
Right.
when you're on break, stop thinking about
Yes.
work.
Yeah.
You have to like you have to rest as well as you work. Because if you work well, but then you rest poorly, you got to rest well, and that includes just stop thinking about work and just think
Andres,
about
think about every
your food.
time you had a first year following you and you watched them sell, which I know you did, and some
Right.
of these low energy demonstrations, and you're thinking, dear God, dude, first of all, you're not this good at this. You need all the help you can get. That's an unforced error. At least show some enthusiasm, you know,
Right.
because
Like,
that goes back to that principle. If they like you, your chance of selling going up. I'm telling you, if you can't make younger kids like you need to work on it. It ain't that hard,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Tease them, you know. My first
Something.
summer, I met an alumni, and it was like week 6, and he goes, "Hey, in sales school, did they teach you to wear 2 different shoes while you were selling?" I said, "No, they don't do that anymore. What's all that about?" He said, "Imagine having on a loafer and a tennis shoe, and you reach down to get your book bag and you start wiping your feet. If that doesn't make you laugh, if you don't come up laughing." So what did I do the rest of the summer? I wore 2 different shoes. I wore like a loafer and a tennis shoe. And I would reach down and I'd wipe my feet and it'd make me laugh. And I'd come up laughing.
Oh,
And I
that's
remember
great.
this teenager one time, he was hungover. He was laying on the couch, half paying attention. He goes, "Hey, dude, you must have gotten up early. You don't even have the same shoes on." I went, "Ah!" Of course, I knew that. And I acted like, "Oh, wow, yeah." But I wanted to, I wasn't going to go, "No, I did that on
Idiot.
purpose." I'm not going to show him up. That ain't going to help me. But
No.
it taught me the principle that, as Spencer Hayes said, take what you do seriously, but don't take yourself
Oh,
seriously.
it's beautiful. That is
So
beautiful.
I've done that in my career where I'm very serious about what I do, but I love to joke, have fun, and make people laugh and just diffuse situations,
That's
right?
beautiful.
And so that works in parenting really well. Just a quick aside, we
Yes,
had
please.
5
Yeah.
kids under the age of 8. We don't have any doubles, and so when you have all this chaos going on, we decided that 2 of our pillars of parenting were deceit and distraction. So sometimes we didn't exactly tell them exactly the right thing. We would kind of use some deceit, and distraction is beautiful when a kid's in a rut. "Hey, look over there." "Oh, and once they get out of that, you knock them out of it. Then you're off to parenting again. But as long as they're in this rut, it doesn't work so well. So
That
deceit
is
and
awesome.
distraction can be used effectively in parenting little ones.
To see this. I just think it's so cool that you've learned these lessons and like you applied them to different. I mean, a lot of the guests we've had on here have done that, obviously, but it's just so cool that that's what you think of naturally. Like I haven't had to ask you about like, hey, how did you use this in your life? You just were like, hey, this worked in parenting. And I'm like, this is great that you're that you. It's very clearly a part of how you live your life is all these lessons that you've learned, and now you're just using them to such a cool extent. That is so fun.
Well, I
Your
think
kids
I think I figured out one
must
day. I
love it.
think I've sat down in 30,000 homes one-on-one with people.
That's
I mean, that's a lot of interactions
so crazy.
one-on-one reading people, And so, and I mean, raising kids is a blast, and we make it fun, and so we love to tease them, I had a grandmother
Yeah.
that was like that. I didn't even realize till after college she'd been messing with us our whole life. She lived to be 103. She was still driving, gardening, and fishing after age 100, laughing and having the best time. And she loved to tease people. But when you're 13, you don't think your grandmother's messing with you. You don't get it yet. Then I was like, she's been messing with us our whole lives.
Forever.
Oh, it's hysterical. We'd be at the beach and there'd be like some girls that we were too scared to talk to or whatever. And then she's like, hey, Steve, those girls came up looking for you. Well, they didn't. They just wanted to get a rise out of us. She was lying to us. So anyway, hold on. Let me get our beeping again to undo.
Sure. While you'll do that, I'll give a quick shout out to one of our friends here on the show. Pat Roach, we asked him what makes him a successful realtor. And that can mean a few things. Someone can build a successful brokerage, or they can be a standout agent. Building out your network is the most important thing for you, the person. So this could be applicable to any career, but in real estate, this has worked really well for Pat. The most important thing to your client is professionalism. So again, take what you do seriously. Do you operate in a high integrity? Do you have good reliability? Can you accurately determine the value for the customer? Those are the questions he has himself. So as you can walk through property and give the proper framing on a listing price, you can play strategically. Each home is listed at a certain price, and if it's overpriced, you have a lot of leverage as a buyer. If it's underpriced, you'll have to act immediately. Good advice from Pat Roach, Southwestern Real Estate. We love Pat. Pat's a big fan of our show. Speaking of kids who sold, I just was on the phone with Pat, and I guess we're recording, just for people to know, we're recording this in August. This probably won't air until late August or early September. But as today, when we were recording this, before we were recording this, Pat had a kid who went to sell books. His daughter sold in like Wisconsin, and he flew out to go deliver with her. So we're excited to have him on the show.
That's a superstar.
Yeah, Pat's awesome.
Superstar. So yeah,
he's
Kurt
one
Massey
of the
went
top
out and delivered with his kids. If you know Kurt.
But we'll have to try to invite him on the show.
Oh, he's awesome.
Oh man.
Yeah.
This is so fun. This is isn't this a wild thing that this, like, I'm just so happy that we did this and we did the podcast. I'm just so glad for the sake of even these conversations. They're so fun.
I got an expert that can teach me more about Colombian soccer. I love
That's right. That is right. Or European, if you watch European soccer.
And I like more of the South American, and then I just have a team in MLS. So, but
fair enough. Question for you regarding the bookfield. What was your favorite territory that you sold in? You sold 9 summers. That's a lot of different places. If you pick a favorite.
Well, there's different reasons you like different ones, but I sold in Maine. I think it was 1987, and I was in Androscoggin County, and it was so cool because it's the only time I'd ever gone into a house that was underground house. You entered from the yard and went underground into the home. So I had 2 of those. And if you think about ambient temperature, it's probably in the 60s. Think about your heating and cooling, right?
Nice.
One was built into the side of a mountain. So basically the glass front is kind of how you entered, but it went into like a cave and had rooms and stuff. So that was pretty unique. And the people were really cool, and so, I mean, I'm from Atlanta. I had to teach the guy where we had breakfast how to make grits. I had my mom send me a 5-pound bag, and I taught him how to make it so that we could have it in the mornings. And so that's one thing we always got a kick out of, Andres, is that we did it the same place every day. and we get there at the same time. We just order the same stuff. So what we would do is we'd pay a week in advance with a big tip, a week in advance, and we say we will be here at exactly whatever time it is, 6:30, whatever it was.
Yep.
And they would have it on the table waiting on us. We'd waltz in. There's our coffee just got poured. There's our meal. We'd finish up and we'd leave conceivably without paying because no one ever saw us pay. And they're like,
Right.
who the heck are these kids? They waltz in, the food's there. They don't pay for it. Everyone knows them. The waitresses love them. Who are these kids?
They're dancing outside.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. And they're having grits. We don't even serve that.
What the hell is this?
Yeah.
Do they think they own the place? No, we're just book dudes.
Exactly.
That's
So,
we had my second summer and my first summer, first and second summer. We didn't do this third and fourth, but my first and second summer, we got one of the people on the wait staff to do execs with us, like our executive exercises outside with us at the end of the summer. And that was like, man, that was an accomplishment. We did it.
That is cool.
Such a fun time.
One thing that was kind of weird and unique, and I don't even know how it happened, but I ended up selling the same lady 2 different summers in 2 different states.
Oh, that's a trip.
So she's like, I got these when I lived in. I'm like, what year was that? And I bolted. I said, that was me.
Hey again, Mrs. Jones.
Hey, I'm back. I'm following you around. I'm stalking you.
Steve again. We'll see you next time you move.
Yeah, exactly.
You bet.
How crazy is that?
That's trippy. Yeah. I had one where I didn't go back to, I went back to the same house, but just not to resell, but I was just driving through old territory because I had sold in New Hampshire one summer, and then the next summer I sold in Vermont, and we had a meeting in Boston. So on the way back, we were going through some of my old turf because there was a pile up on the highway that detoured us. And by happenstance, I'm like, oh my God, I sold in this town. And I was with my first years, and they're like, no way. I'm like, yeah, I remember all these houses. I remember what they bought. You were talking about gifts. I don't have that many gifts, but one thing I did have a gift for that helped me a lot when I was selling books was my memory.
Yeah.
After my first summer, after every summer, now it's been 10 years since, but like, especially immediately after the summer, I could tell you what they bought, how much they owed me to the penny, how many kids they had, what years, what age, all that. It just stuck with me. And I was like, oh yeah, I still know her name actually, so I'm not gonna say it out loud, but that's Susan. And she has the kid, he's gonna be whatever, and she's a firefighter. And they're like, no way, you're just making that up. This is bullshit. I'm like, all right, hold on. So I turned around, I stopped, and I knocked on the door. I'm like, I hope she's home. And she opens and she goes, Andres? My first year, so I'm like, what the hell?
Yeah.
So I'm like, told you. And she goes, yeah, this is. And so she goes, yeah, you were around last year. Like, yeah, we still use them, love them. And I'm to a first year, they were like, because they were shocked that it worked, that well.
Yeah.
And so that's always fun when you kind of revisit that kind of stuff.
We've got that in common. So this is a ministry that we support. It's called Blue Skies, and a friend of mine started it. It is for families that have a child with pediatric cancer. And what makes it different is she was an oncology nurse, and she decided that she wanted to take the entire family to the beach for a week and love on them, not just the child. So it was giving the entire family a week off where we do all their laundry, cook all their meals, have games, date night. We do everything to give them a week off and lots of fun and joy and the love of Christ for a week. And so we end up going to church one day, and I saw the license plate was from a county I sold in 1985, Bull County, Kentucky, when I lived in Danville. And the people got out. I said, you guys don't have to live in Danville, do you? They said, yeah, we do. And I said, do you know the English teacher, Lou Cheese? They go, yeah, we know Lou. I said, well, she bought a set of books from me in 85. When you get back home, tell her the bookman said hello, that you met him at church 40 years later.
Just such a wild time. The crazy. Yeah. You said 30,000 homes, and we've seen it all. I mean, I haven't been into 30, but I've been in several thousand, and it's just like hoarders, divorcees, newly married, clean freaks, you name it. You see it all. Agoraphobics. I sold to a family that hadn't left the house in 8, like I think it was 10 years. Just like
So you reminded me of
Crazy.
something I wanted to tell you because this is a good life lesson. My first summer, what I proved to myself is there's about 200 buyers out there if you work over 80 hours every week, because I didn't sell anybody, but I had about 200 customers. So they just bought. So I wasn't good at selling. In my first week, there was one lady who was super nice to me, and she bought a set of books. And she was probably the nicest person I met all summer. I couldn't wait to deliver her books because I remembered her. She was so nice. When I knocked on her door to deliver her books, that was probably the meanest person I dealt with in my 9 years that answered the door.
Wow.
I mean, mean. And so here's the lesson in it is that her real true self was the first one I met. That's who she is. I don't know what happened to her the day I delivered the books. It had nothing to do with me. But what I learned is when you meet somebody and you have a bad experience, you can't just automatically jump to that person is a fill in the blank because you've had one interaction with them. And that taught me that in 1983. And that was a very valuable lesson because when I meet somebody and it's a bad experience, I remember that. And I'm convinced her true nature was the first one, not the second one.
Yeah. Brilliant lesson. That's so beautiful to eloquently put. It's same thing where it's like you would see a house. This probably happened to you. You see a house and you're like, there's no way they're buying. And you walk in and whether out of kindness or because of modesty or whatever, and for different reasons, they proved you wrong. Or on the other hand, you're like, oh, they're buyers. And it turns out like, not so nice. It's you just learn to never really judge. They say never judge a book by its cover. That should be upgraded in the bookman world to never judge a house by the door.
Right.
By the
Well,
by the sign.
there's one other key element that has to be there in every sale. They have to have an open mind.
Right.
So everything else doesn't matter if they don't have an open mind, but you don't know that till you meet them.
That's why when you asked me about the objection, I was like, are they interested? Because like it doesn't. I mean, if that's the first thing. If you're not even open minded to sitting down with me to talk for 5 minutes or on your front porch, I don't even have to come inside.
So here's the point: is that nobody's going to sell any of those, right?
Right.
But how many sales are missed of people that would have bought had a different person stop by that understood the process of selling because they didn't get the right elements in there?
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you an example. Like they didn't get the husband in and it all blew up because of that. But what if they had? And then my point is that when you have the right elements, the only reason they don't buy is if they don't think they'd use them.
Yeah, no, that's correct. No, that's what when you said that, I'm like, that makes so much sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Once you figure that out, it helps you help them. Because really, at the end of the day, if they're not going to use them, your job's to figure it out in 10 minutes or less. And then chalk it up as a win, get your pre-approach, move on.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's also big too, because what you said is more key, I think, in general, because we're assuming that if you're in a sit down, that's what matters. Like if you get a person that slams you in the face, Dave Rosen wasn't going to sell that person.
Right.
He got doors slammed on his face too. That's a different. That's like earlier on. What you're talking about is like if you were sitting down with someone, here's what you need to know for them to buy. If you're in the sit down,
right
now. The biggest thing is that also helps besides like the butterflies in your stomach when you're going to close, which is really what you were. Besides that is also the feeling of like your cancellations has to go down because you're probably if you sold someone that like wasn't sure and then you had to kind of convince them, the likelihood of them canceling a few days higher, even if they don't like there was a higher chance. So that's one thing. And two, there's also no like guilt on your side because there was a couple of times my first summer where that did happen. Where I would sell to a family and I'm like, I don't know that I got the kid or like that I'm certain that they were going to use those books. And that family just spent, even if it wasn't an uncomfortable $500 for them, sometimes it was like that person just spent $500 on something that they're probably not going to use. And that's not good for anybody. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, I made money, but was it worth it to waste their time? That money could have gone to like kids soccer camp or that he could have, whatever. So I always thought about that too. So what you're saying would eliminate all of that.
Well, entirely. And the other thing is, here's the biggest lie ever. She is a great salesman. They can sell anybody. That's not a great salesman. That's a bad salesman. The good one
Yes.
is one that can figure out who could use what you're selling and help them get it. That's the good one. And then leaving on the ones and not wasting time with those that don't. That's a good salesman. The other one's a
Oh,
bad
preach.
salesman.
Preach, sir. That was that. You've said so many golden nuggets of wisdom, but out of all of the things you said, I think that's the one that's like, if we had to like make a public post about sales in general for people who were outside of Southwestern to listen to, that's it right there.
Well, think about
You
this.
nailed it.
I
Nailed
leave
it.
a house in 10 minutes when I know they're not going to use it, and I know I won. I'm leaving a winner in that situation.
Right.
But if you
Oh,
think that the only way to win is to make a sale, and every time you don't make a sale, you lost, you're not going to do well in selling for a lot of reasons. One is going to blow your mind out. You're gonna melt your brain. And so you have the ability through self-awareness and understanding to win in every situation once you get good at it. Now, I look at the people that I met my first year and who bought in my ninth year. I just got better at it, right?
yeah.
But then every situation I was leaving in, I was winning because you didn't find me in my later years spending 20, 30 minutes without a sale because I'd already figured out who was getting them. And the ones that weren't, I was leaving. Then those 2
Right.
days on Thursday with Bruce, I just didn't run into any situations. I didn't feel bad at all at the end of the day. I said, Bruce, this is exactly what I did Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And then now I'm on 510, instead of
Beautiful.
500. So
This is, I feel like you just made me think of this, and I'll do this analogy. We can go into some ponytails of like some of your favorite stories of the book field. But this, you just made me think of this. What you're saying is, and this is beautiful. It's like a lottery ticket, a scratch lottery ticket. What do you do with a scratch lottery ticket? You scratch all of it to find out if you're a winner or not, right? Like, and the elements of there, like the things you said, if the kid will use them, if the decision maker's there, right? Those are all. If you have a ticket that has all those three, they're gonna buy. But at the minute that you find out that you don't have one of those things, you throw away that ticket. Why would
right,
you keep scratching? You know what I'm
right,
saying? Like if the ticket said yes, they will use them. Yes, the decision makers there, right? All these things. But if the first one said no,
right.
would you keep scratching that ticket? No, you'd freaking move on to the next one because you don't have a winning number. So you just go to the next ticket instead of like trying to scratch the rest of it. That's stupid.
And
That's
chalking it up
brilliant.
as a win because you didn't waste any
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. You didn't waste the precious scratching time, right?
Well, think
Or
about
make a
that. And
mess.
you do that consistently for 13 hours, you end up with inside 4 extra houses, and 2 of them
Yeah.
have to be buying situations. You just made 2 more sales you wouldn't have made
Yeah. Absolutely.
because you understand how to work it.
And it multiplies because the families that you talk to all are excited about what they just purchased.
Right.
So when they go talk to, their cousin Sal or their neighbor Steve or their church friend, Bob, hey, did Steve stop by your house yet? Oh no, if he does, we just got these books that Billy's gonna love them. You show up to, their house. Oh yeah, they got it. They loved it. Like they're raving about it because all those three things are firm. That's brilliant. Brilliant.
I'm sorry,
Preach.
one other thing that if anyone's out there selling, and I don't know what the books are like today, but every chapter had an introduction. They're like a paragraph, like for
Right.
math, for history, for spelling, whatever, right? And I would tell the mom, I'd say, look, you just made an investment. You owe it to your family just to flip to the beginning of each chapter and just read the introduction. Don't worry about it and then flip to the next one and just do that. If they take the time to flip through that book once and just read the introduction, they're going to use the books.
Yeah.
And I put it on the parent, not the kid.
Yep.
And then they
Brilliant.
can't blame the kid.
Yeah. I love that. I had a dad one time. He goes, all right, here's this, because it's sometimes you would sell at the beginning of the summer and they would still selling books. They were still in school. And so they were still getting homework. And the dad literally went, if you can find this problem in your sample book, I'm buying the whole set right now. And I was like, "Pfft," and I knew the product
Yeah.
and it was like some math thing. I'm like, oh yeah, it's right here. And luckily one of the pages from the sample book was the same as the set. I'm like, oh yeah, look right here.
That's funny.
The
That's
dad
good.
like just go, dang it. And he just, all right, whatever. What do I owe you? I'm like, well, you said the whole set, right?
Yeah.
So
Hey,
then
Johnny, the good news is your dad's a man of his word. That's what I like about your dad. And I've only just met him. So he's going to get the whole set for you.
and he clearly cares about your education. And he can help you with homework because he
That is great. I love
it
it.
was so fun. It was a good time. Oh man. Oh, Well, let's jump into some of your favorite memories, stories, or experiences that you might have still have that you haven't shared yet. We call these the ponytails. If you guys are first listeners onto the show, thus the name ponytails. Um, and Oh dang, I had another question for you, but maybe this will come up through your stories. I will share a couple as you think, or scratch your head for some of these. I'll share a couple more things from some of our friends here on the show, and then we can jump into the ponytails. A couple things we want to give a shout out to Greta Huerta. Greta, you're a stud. She was a previous guest on our show, working with Cardinal Senior Benefits, and she loves working there. One of the things that she wanted to share with us as far as getting and obtaining financial freedom is investing in yourself. So as you earn, guys, make sure you save. Make sure you save your way. Her advice, since she's being in the financial world, the first thing she says is make sure that you get a cushion of about 30 to 55,000 in savings, so you can be light years ahead in case any emergency arises. Save. Make sure you have something in emergency savings. That's her biggest advice. And then I also want to give a quick shout out over to EnLight.Energy. These guys are in the solar business, crushing it all over the country. And they're starting to open up in multiple states, but they're moving forward and gaining momentum. So this is a good year to get into the business. So if you guys are interested in going into solar, reach out to us. We'll reach out to EnLight.Energy for you. Automatic interview for you guys there if you're just not leaving the book field and you want something else to do. So that's awesome. All right, Steve. Okay, I want to hear some of your favorite stories. Because I'm excited. 9 Summers, you gotta have like a couple that you're like really excited about. And then one question I did have for you, if there's time at the end, is about commitment, right? And as a newly married person, as a person that just started a business, right? I'm married to both things, right? To this passion I have, to this discovered idea that is working well. So if you could share maybe at the end, or if one of your stories involves anything about what your mentality is for commitment, that would be super cool, because I feel like you're a good person to ask. So the microphone is yours, sir. Share away in whatever order you desire.
What's funny is that obviously I've told my kids about selling books, and so 9 years that's a lot of time. So it's hard to narrow it down to a couple, but one that I told them the other day was that I was in a trailer, and it was a single mom, and the kid was about third grade, and it was just the three of us in the trailer, and I'm showing 2 books, so it was about $80, and she decides that she wants to buy these books for her son, and I explained to her how it worked. We take half down, half at the end of the summer, and she said, "Okay, that would be fine." And she goes and gets her purse, and then she starts counting out ones, and she counts out 40 ones. And I said, "Oh, you must be a waitress." And the boy goes, "No, she's a dancer." Wow, that kind of caught me off guard. So a little quick in the mind, I said, "That's awesome. I guess you won't have any trouble with the balance. That'll be great."
That's a recession-proof business.
But that was one that caught me off guard.
Oh, it's the best. The kid knows it too. The kid's like, she's a
Oh my God.
dancer.
Let's put it this way. You wouldn't have guessed that profession with meeting her. Let's put it that way, okay?
Sure. Got it. I understand.
Like maybe she worked by the airport, not downtown.
Right. That makes sense.
And then I drove a 1977 yellow Celica. It was the coolest color car. I love that car. And it's a pretty, you've probably never seen a yellow 77 Celica. It's not one where you go to a parking lot and there's 4 of them, right?
Right. It's not common.
There was this one family, and their driveway, if it wasn't a half a mile, it was way back there. And I kept trying to catch him, and I couldn't catch him. And so one day I get back there, and there's a car. So I figure they're home. I'm like, this is great. So I knock on the back door, and I hear, "Come on in," which, but it was like my 7th year. And I thought, okay, there you go. That's the exact color, a little different model, but that's what I'm driving. Something that looks like that.
Oh my gosh.
I pushed the door open, and Andres, there's a gun pointed right at me. a rifle. The guy saw me, and the second he saw me, he's like, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." His daughter drives the exact same car. He was playing a joke on her.
Oh
I didn't think it was very
gosh.
funny at the time, but I'm like,
No,
"Holy
it's
man."
not.
So I was like, "What are the odds?" You know, and he's thinking to himself, "What are the odds that's not my daughter? You know, what are the
Right.
odds? It can't not be." Boy,
No
was he like,
way.
you know, of course he bought a set of books. It was probably out of shame, but that was pretty unique. Um, and, I was my summer in Kentucky. There was a bunch of coal miners, and so not tremendous wealth.
Right.
And I remember a family that decided to buy the books, and the dad got up and said, "Okay, let me go get the money." And he went in the kitchen and he opened the freezer. And in the back of the freezer, he pulled out money. You ever heard the term cold hard cash? And he started
Now I
counting
have.
cash out of the freezer. And I said to him, I said, "That's interesting. I've never seen that. Why do you keep your money there?" He said, "Son, we don't have very much. If my house caught fire, that's the best shot at it still being here after the fire. But I'm investing in those books."
Wow.
So cold hard cash. I,
That's the meaning.
I was handed some at one time.
Wow.
Yeah, that was kind of crazy. And then I told this one. My son loves guns. Both of them do actually. But I was telling, I grew up in downtown Atlanta, so I'm an Eagle Scout. I do lots outdoors, but I'm from the city, so I love working in the country because to me it's like fresh air therapy. That's your office. I loved it, and so I
Mhm.
remember pulling up to a farmhouse, and the dad was out in the field, and I just walked back there and started talking to him. And I remember he had a holster with a 6-shooter on his hip. You don't normally see people with a gun like that. And so I
Right.
remember commenting on it. His name was George Johnson. And I said, "George, what's with the gun?" And he said, "Rattlesnakes. If one comes up, it made sense to me." I said,
Yeah.
"Makes sense." I've had friends that hunt that have had, they chose to kill the rattlesnake as opposed to get closer. So no big deal. 2 weeks later, I'm talking to a lady and telling all the people that bought the books. And I said, "You might know George Johnson." And she said, "Was he carrying a gun?" That's not usually the first question you get asked when you mention a name. And I said, "Now that you mention it, yeah, he was." Because I remembered it doesn't happen that often, right? And I said, "Why do you ask?" "I'm his probation officer. He's not supposed to have that gun." I was
Oh
like, "Ooh."
no.
Wasn't trying to get in trouble. She asked me a question. I was just honest, you know? I was like,
Oh
"Ah, crap, George.
no.
Sorry about that, buddy. I wasn't trying to."
Uh,
But so, you do something long enough, you just hit all these, you know, crazy situations that make you chuckle 20, 30 years later, you know?
oh, that's
So
brilliant.
when we watch soccer, I'll share some more with you.
Yeah, the heck yeah. Oh my gosh. And what we need is we need to have we do sometimes we do couples episodes. So if you ever want to have your wife on with us too, you come back and share some more stories together. That'd be cool to share your guys' story. That's always fun on that end. We did that in February. We had
Well,
married couples editions.
it's interesting because everyone that knows me knows that I'm married over my head. I married a woman way sharper than me. And
That
so
makes two of us,
that's
sir.
one
I guess
reason.
three of us with Dan Moore.
Oh, absolutely. And so ask Dan, he'll second it, third it, and fourth it. But that was one of the coolest things about this job because I met somebody who was so incredibly sharp, and had all the qualities that I was looking for. That it was really the best part of my ninth summer. If I didn't sell that ninth year, there's no way we meet.
Wow.
She went to the University of Virginia. I went to Georgia Tech. There's no reason to meet ever. It's her second year, and I would have just finished my eighth year and been off. So I think there's some godly providence in my life. I could give you many stories that line up completely with that. Um, but my best friend, David Stanley, his wife sold, was a sales manager. She opened the European division for Dave Causer, Shannon Barry, who's now Shannon
Oh,
Stanley. So Shannon did that back in the early 90s,
that's sweet.
or maybe it was the late 80s. Anyway, um, and so I've got a bunch of friends that both them and their wives both sold books. Ella's sorority sister married Chad Conover, who sold books, and Renee sold with my wife. And I mean there's some great stories like that are the people we hang out with today, and so we all have that common experience, and the wives as well,
Wow,
so
that's
it's
sweet.
really cool.
Wow, where would you be, right, if you hadn't gone back?
Oh,
That's so wild.
I tell you, it wouldn't look as good as it does today. So
No, that's so
yeah,
wild. That's so cool. Ah, wow. Well, Steve Herlihy, we've arrived. We've arrived. We've been on for 2 hours and 15 minutes. Can you believe that?
no,
It just goes so quick.
I tell you, it's like Well, like
It,
I said, you've got a place in Atlanta now, so we've got room.
uh,
You know,
I will come. I will listen. I'm the
bring your
kind of
wife. I'd
person
love to
who,
meet her. Bring your
yeah,
kids. My,
yeah,
my
no
wife
kids
wouldn't
yet,
want riding her. Oh, if you have, okay. So,
but maybe by then, who knows? But
hey,
by the World Cup, we should have a couple.
there you go. She's
So
qualified. That's like a Tuesday for her. That's a nothing. You know.
that's chill. Oh, that's awesome, man. It's funny. This is the beauty. People don't who are listening to this for the first time. We don't do pre-approach, so people might be like, "How come you didn't know this about it?" But yeah, we don't. But the reason for that is just to create this connection over the course of a couple hours. We never intend for episodes to go long. Like it's not like we're pushing for it. It just happens that way, right? When you meet two people, when you have two people who sell books who don't know each other, and you start talking about it, it just kind of gets away from you.
Can I tell you
So
one other quick thing before we bug out of here?
yes,
So,
please, please.
so David Stanley was hired by a guy named Mike Tehan. And Mike and Dave both sold a bunch of years in Blitz. And after one summer, they decided to travel to Asia and Australia. Okay. And so they're sitting at a bar in Australia, and there walks a
Oh.
girl by with a 400 unit shirt on. And it was Faith Carta who
No.
we sold with. And they're like, we're halfway around the world. We're trying to get away from the damn bookfield. We can't even go to Australia. And here comes a 400 unit shirt walking by. And she was with Sean. Faith and Sean were traveling together that year, but it was so darn funny. And then they go from there to, I don't know if it was Japan or China, but somewhere where you don't see a lot of English spoken. They go to a hole in the wall bar. They're down there and they hear some other American voices, and no one else is speaking English. Nobody. And this guy goes, are you guys in the service? They said, no, we're just a bunch of college kids having a little holiday. We're over here hanging out. And so
No.
Dave's like, well, where are you from? And he goes, I'm from Bull County, Kentucky, or so wherever he said. He goes, you're kidding me. I just spent the last 3 months there. Let me tell you about all your friends and who married who and who's doing what. And he told this service
No.
everything about his community that you could possibly know from a summer selling books. Because Dave sold everybody. He knew everybody.
He was
He
that guy.
knew who was doing what, who married who was doing, and this guy was just like, there's no way. This guy dropped into this one bar and he's telling me about all my friends. Is that crazy?
That's crazy. Oh man.
That's the
Uh,
kind of stuff you get to hear at your job, those kind of
I
stories.
love it. Yeah, I love it. That's how the show started. I was telling you about the scroll. That's why the
Yeah.
podcast, one of the biggest reasons the podcast started is I was visiting Will Metscher in Portland and we went to a bar with some other book guys. And that connection, we had we drank for like 4 hours, just all six of us talking about books just like this. And I'm like,
Yeah.
man, that's why the idea came. I'm like, man, if I could recreate that and then put it on the air and then have other book people, show to other book people, they totally would listen to it because we all
Sure.
love connecting like that. It's so fun. And
Well,
he
and also on another day, you can email me, but tell me how you're monetizing your firm and how me and my friends can help you with what you're trying to grow. Because
Oh,
I think
yeah.
you got a great thing that you're doing, and everyone has a business model. So I'd love to understand how you're set up and What would
Sure.
help you grow your company?
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. We can set up an appointment with that. Amy is our person or like contact person for booking
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah, we can sit down and talk about that.
yeah.
More than anything, what I want to say is, again, thank you so much for this. This is so cool that we get to do this. And I mean, I told my brother this morning I was recording with you, and he's like, "Who's that?" I'm like, "He sold, I think, in the '80s and '90s," and he's like, "Oh, okay." But it's so neat. It's so beautiful because like now I get to like celebrate another person who was super successful in this program and find out what they're doing now. And then just to be able to grow our network and to connect people and to give people a platform to be like, hey, what was your story? It only
Yeah.
works with our guests. And so thank you so much for doing this. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, and like you said, if there's someone out there that's in the space of wanting to work with the wealthiest families and do really good work for them, we're hiring. We're gonna train up the next group of people to really grow this company
Yeah.
and teach them how to do it. And we were taught by guys that had sold books, and we bought them out, and there'll be another group in behind us. So if there's someone that wants to leverage our 40 years of reputation and knowledge, and we can help them have a great career. That helped me. A couple old sales managers started a company in 1981 in Houston, Texas, and me and my partners own it now 30, 40 years later. So, maybe there's
It's
someone out there
brilliant.
that wants to chat about what we're up to.
Sure. And I have some context for you. Once we're off the air, I'll share with you kind of related to that might be
Yeah.
of interest to you. But for now, if you guys want to get a hold of Steve, it's Stephen T. Herlihy at gmail.com. That's Stephen like Stefan. I always say Stefan because growing up, I was trying to learn English. I was like, Stefan, PH makes an F sound, makes a V sound. I don't even know. So
Yeah.
Stephen, Stephen, T as in Tom, Herlihy is Herlihy at gmail.com. So it's full name, first name, middle initial, and last name at gmail.com. If you guys want to learn more about what Steve's up to, the job opportunity, or anything like that, any questions like that, he'd probably be glad to respond to any of that. So on that note, my name is Andres Gamboa. Thank you guys so much for sticking with us all throughout the end of the episode. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Instagram, like us, buy our merch, check out, you can get this t-shirt. Yay. Go to our website, you can find all that stuff. And then sign up for our newsletter. On that note, we'll catch you guys in the next episode. Peace out, everybody. Bye.